Chapter 2468. Due to Chu Yang's strange actions, everyone fell into silence at the eastern gate of Taijing City. However, the news of his arrival still spread out from the eastern gate and swept through the entire Taijing City like a hurricane. Chu Yang is here. That Chu Yang is here. That Chu Yang who said that no one in Zhengzhou could read or count is here. Super country bumpkin, the lowest of the lowest is here. That arrogant bastard is not only here, he is also causing trouble at the eastern gate. Everyone, let's go and see. The voices were like waves, advancing deeper and deeper into the Taijing City. In this process, the voices did not weaken. Instead, as more and more people went deeper into the city, the voices became louder and louder, spreading to the entire Taijing City at the fastest speed. The news of Chu Yang's arrival was like a black cloud that was about to destroy the city. It was like a flood that poured into the entire Taijing City. It seemed to have drowned the entire city in all directions and not a single corner was left out. Such a scene could be said to be spectacular and grand. For thousands of years, only Chu Yang had such treatment and influence. He had attracted the attention of all the people in the Tai capital. The reason was mostly because Chu Yang himself was simply too talkative. He had too many gimmicks to begin with. Chu Yang is here. That Chu Yang is here. It was even like this. That country bumpkin is here. That super country bumpkin is here. Almost at the same time, many voices resounded in Duke Zhu's mansion. Shangguan Can, Shangguan Lan, Shangguan Xiao, Shangguan Yun and his wife, as well as Duke Zhu and the others, all received the news in an instant. Waha! Rampant laughter also resounded in Duke Zhu's mansion. He said without restraint, Chu Hang, you bastard, you're finally here. This divine bird's life is finally going to be lively and exciting, waha! In the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu clans, Qi Mansion, and many other mansions in the capital, Duke Zhu's mansion had never been seen before. Even the Jin Emperor wouldn't be able to see such a scene. It could be said that people were in awe of the Jin Emperor, so they didn't dare to shout like this. Thus, in this aspect, the Jin Emperor was truly inferior. Damn it, what's so great about that pile of shit? How could it cause such a huge commotion? Similar to Duke Zhu's residence and Shangguan Can's rage could be seen everywhere in Grand Capital. When Shangguan Can and the others found out that they were welcoming Chu Yang in such a grand manner, they were furious. They would never be able to do something like this in their entire lives. In other words, they had lost from the very beginning. When the news of Chu Yang telling a story at the city gate spread, the entire Tai capital became even noisier. If the entire Taijing City was a vast ocean, then the clamor was like a huge fish that was causing trouble in Taijing City and setting off monstrous waves. Storytelling. Oh my god, to think that Chu Yang could come up with something like this. This country bumpkin is indeed a clown. It's true that seeing once is better than hearing 100 times. I don't think he's telling a story. He's provoking us with this kind of joke. Why care about this? Let's go and see first. The crowd was like a flood as they all rushed towards the eastern gate. The scene was like a dam bursting and the flood was raging. Chapter 2469. The magistrate of Taijing City thought about it and started to sweat. If this continued, it would be even more worrying. There would definitely be people stirring up trouble in the dark. He could already see Taijing City in chaos and an uncontrollable scene. Chu Yang, you bastard. Don't let me seize this opportunity. Otherwise, I will tear you apart. Finally, he could not help but roar out. The officials of Taijing City sympathized with their magistrate and their hearts were filled with hatred. Because of that bullshit Chu Yang's arrival, they were completely in trouble. Now that it was like this, who knew what would happen when the imperial examinations were held? Unlucky. It was really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. However, they were the officials of Taijing City and had to be responsible for the security of Taijing City. While the magistrate of Taijing City and the officials were worried, Chu Yang had already started to talk about his book. He wanted to talk about a part of the water margin. Lu Tihei punched Zhen Guanxi. Lu Da and the other two came to the Pan family's tavern and sat down in a room. Lu Tihei sat in the main seat, Li Zhong sat opposite him and Shijin sat below him. The bartender called out and recognized Lu Tihei. He said, "Sir, how much wine do you want?" Lu Tihei said, "Let's get 4 jiao wine first." The bartender asked again, "Sir, how do you want to eat?" Lu Tihei said, "What are you asking? But if I have it, I will just sell it and return it to you. This bastard only cares about being noisy." At this point, the image of an extremely forthright man appeared in everyone's mind. At this time, Chu Yang explained Lu Tihei's background because the first half of Lu Tihei's punching Zhenguanxi was missing. Only then did he continue to talk about it. After everyone knew about it, the so-called Lu Tihei became clearer. They knew that this plaything was actually a Lu Tihei who committed a crime and became a monk. When he was drunk, he pulled out a weeping willow. In the tavern, there was a sea of people and even more people were coming. However, it was very quiet. Only Chu Yang's voice could be heard. Lu Tihei and the other two drank several cups. They were chatting and comparing their marksmanship. While they were talking, they heard someone sobbing in the pavilion next door. Lu Tihei was so anxious that he threw the plates and cups on the floor. As the story unfolded, people gradually became engrossed in it, forgetting everything else. However, Chu Yang's sudden roar startled everyone. "I've been working for the military governor of the old Zhong Empire for a long time, and now I've become one of the 5 roads inspector of Guanxi. You are a butcher who sells meat. You are like a dog, and you are also called Zhenguanxi. How did you trick Jin Tsuelian?" After roaring, Chu Yang used his spiritual power to summon Zhenguanxi. However, there were 6 people in Zhenguanxi. However, weren't the 6 of them going up against the 6 young masters of Taijing City? How was this Lu Tihei punching Zhenguanxi? This was clearly Chu Yang beating up the 6 young masters of Taijing City. Following that, people saw 6 fists the size of vinegar bowls appearing. They punched the noses of the 6 people, causing blood to spurt out. Half of their noses were crooked. It was very miserable. Moreover, that so-called Chu Yang was still describing vividly, as if he was enjoying it very much. It was as if he had opened a soy sauce shop. Salty, sour, spicy, all came out. Don't even mention the Zheng Tufu's sour taste. He beat the 6 young masters of Taijing City until they opened a soy sauce shop. He really dared to imagine. People were speechless at Chu Yang's narcissism and arrogance. Of course, they all knew that this was a joke, a provocation, and a declaration of war. Later on, it was even worse. After the 6 Zheng Tufu were beaten up, they only shouted, "Good beating." Chapter 2470. Bastard, you still dare to answer. Chu Yang roared again, and gave everyone a fright. Then, they saw the 6 fists raised again, and punched the 6 people's eyes. Their eyes cracked, and black pearls burst out. It was as if a colorful silk shop had been opened. Red, black, and purple were all blooming out. The 6 people begged for mercy and looked even uglier. Chu Yang was even more impressive and looked like he was going to destroy them on behalf of the moon, making the crowd even more speechless. After that, Lu Tihei's third punch came out. The 6 people fell straight to the ground and were completely dead. The crowd fell silent. At this moment, everyone seemed to have heard Chu Yang's rampant voice. He could kill the 6 young masters of Taijing City with just 3 punches. Lu Tihei's punches conveyed the meaning of Zhenguanxi's insufferably arrogant. Chu Yang came to Taijing City to be an accomplice to a villain, not to be a dead man. Place your bets, place your bets. The odds are 100 to 1. Lu Tihei is 100, Butcher Zheng is 1. Most of the crowd were just here to watch the show, but there was no lack of people who had ill intentions towards Chu Yang or were subordinates of the 6 young masters. For example, Shangguan Bao, who was on a mission. He was angry, but before he could open his mouth, a voice came in. Shangguan Bao looked over and found that it was Xia Wanjin from the Xia family. He couldn't help but be surprised. Xia Wanjin actually dared to side with Chu Yang and go against the 6 young masters of Taijing City. I bet on Butcher Zheng. Another voice came out. When it entered Shangguan Bao's ears, he couldn't help but be furious. That bastard. This was completely to lead the crowd to equate Chu Yang with Lu Tihei and the shrewd Butcher Zheng with the 6 young masters. Shangguan Bao glanced over and saw a pretty boy who was prettier than a woman. He almost couldn't help but fall in love at first sight, so he was stunned. The crowd was more or less the same, and the pretty boy Wei Xian naturally appeared on the scene. Hihi, so it's you who has been stripped naked and hung up to dry. Xia Wanjin laughed sinisterly. Wei Xian was enraged. Bullshit, do you dare to bet? I'll bet everything I have. If Butcher Zheng wins, I won't ask for money. I'll strip you naked and hang you up to dry. What do you think? Hihi, as you wish. Xia Wanjin was brimming with confidence, looking like he was sure to win. He said disdainfully, although this great one looks down on your entire wealth. The gigolo Wei Xian was enraged again, but he did not flare up at Xia Wanjin. Instead, he roared at the crowd, are there still men in Taijing City? You've already been bullied to the point of being silent. Furthermore, it was obvious that Butcher Zheng was going to win without a doubt. The odds were 1 to 100, yet you actually missed such a great opportunity to make a fortune. Are you all stupid? Hurry up and get this thing done. Let's destroy his family. No one answered, but many people felt that as things developed, everything seemed to become more and more complicated, and more dangerous. Waraha. Suddenly, brazen laughter sounded from the direction of Duke Ju's residence, followed by brazen words. This divine bird has been reborn, and I vow to overthrow the central plains. Flutter. A multicolored light flew over at an extremely fast speed. Then, people saw a parrot land on Chu Yang's shoulder. It used its majestic wings to poke Xia Wanjin. Xia, this divine bird heard everything clearly. Don't quibble. Don't be perfunctory. I want 30% of the bet. Not a single hair less. Bullshit. If you dare to let out one more fart, I will tell the whole world that Pichu is a fraud. He is betting on Lu Tihei to beat Shen Guanxi. Everyone is betting on him to win. You will be completely bankrupt. Where did this group of people get their confidence from? Many people watched all of this, watched this farce. They were completely confused. Chu Yang was facing the famous 6 great young masters of Taijing City. The 6 great young masters of Taijing City were all dragons and phoenixes among men, geniuses among geniuses, and Avilders among Avilders. Who dared to say that he could win against them? Shangguan Bao was also confused. Chu Yang was a country bumpkin among country bumpkins. What did he rely on? He dared to act so brazenly the moment he entered Taijing City. Could it be that the ignorant are fearless? He felt that there seemed to be such an explanation. Chu Yang watched everything with a smile and didn't say anything. He took the initiative to provoke them, mainly for the sake of the bet, and also to test them. If that was the case, the 6 great young masters wouldn't be able to hold themselves back and would jump out. He really didn't have anything to worry about. Of course, this was just the beginning. The best part was yet to come. Chapter 2471. The parrot and Xia Wanjin fought each other crazily under the watchful eyes of the people in Taijing City. After a while, they finally stopped. Xia Wanjin felt aggrieved. He had made great progress, but this lousy bird was not bad either. Following Shangguan Lan, not only did it reach the strength of a saint, its strength was even more astonishing. Its wings and claws, as well as its lousy beak, were much sharper than before. The parrot felt the same. Although it had a little upper hand, many of its beautiful feathers had been plucked out. It was obviously in the rhythm of being stripped naked, which seriously affected its image as a divine bird. Otherwise, it would not have let Xia Wanjin go so easily. Fortunately, Peng Peng and Xiong Xiong are not here. If these 2 things were here, I would be in big trouble if I fought against 3. Xia Wanjin spoke bluntly and made his inner thoughts known to the public, which made people feel a wave of surprise. Shouldn't such inner thoughts be enough to just say it in your heart? Wouldn't it be a bit embarrassing to say it out loud? It would even reveal your weakness. Xia, who are you saying is not here? The divine Xiong Longxiang is here. Wanjin, who are you saying is not here? The omnipotent Liu Yunpeng is here. Suddenly, 2 figures jumped out from the crowd and then said in unison, the sky flashes, the 2 generals make their grand entrant. The 2 silhouettes that shocked everyone were Liu Yunpeng and Xiong Longxiang. After the 2 of them shouted their slogan, They smiled at Xia Wanjin and said, "Jinjin, you're really not impressive at all. You can't even take care of a broken bird." The parrot was attacked and directly scolded, "Hey, you two, who agreed to let you use this divine bird's opening speech? The sky flashes, the grand entrance, is it something you can use? You damn bird, you want to steal the registered trademark again. Evil intentions, damn bird's opening speech is the work of our blood, sweat, and tears. How can you use such a despicable means to steal it? Give up." Xia Wanjin was directly thrown aside. Liu Yunpeng and Xiong Longxiang teamed up to scold the parrot, and then they fought. It was very lively again. When Xia Wanjin joined the battle, the gigolo Wei Xian felt that it was very interesting and joined in as well, hitting anyone he saw. Liu Yunpeng, the parrot, and the other three all suffered a calamity. They angrily attacked Wei Xian, and in the end, the five of them fought a chaotic battle. Chaos ensued, and the atmosphere was foul. Everyone felt that it was strange just by looking at it. Originally, the main character was Chu Yang, but now it had become these five shameless idiots. Chu Yang just smiled. Seeing the parrot, Liu Yunpeng, and Xiong Longxiang again was a very good thing. Especially when he saw that their strength had improved greatly and they had all reached the sage level, he was even more happy and delighted from the bottom of his heart. Although he was a little surprised that Liu Yunpeng and the others could advance so quickly, he thought about it and figured out the reason. Xia Wanjin had the support of the Xia family, and the parrot was because of Shangguanlan. Liu Yunpeng had the support of the rock sage, and Xiong Longxiang should have benefited from Liu Yunpeng. The rock sage probably also helped Xiong Longxiang. Because of the intervention of Xia Wanjin and the other four, everything was messed up and interrupted. As such, no one would have thought that the main character, Chu Yang, would not say anything, so no one could do anything. "Chu Hang, what are you laughing at? Chu Hang, don't you know that you looked like a fool just now?" Chu Yang's face was full of smiles as he watched the parrot and the others fight. He was getting happier and happier. The parrot was the first to be unhappy and immediately roared. Behind it, Xia Wanjin, Liu Yunpeng, Wei Xian, and the others all spoke out. "Waha!" Suddenly, the parrot realized something and laughed wildly. "Chu Hang, you're only in the Nirvana realm. Fortunately, you call yourself a genius. You've been left behind by this divine bird. Haha, Chu Hang, you're so weak." Chapter 2472. The parrot, Liu Yunpeng, Xiong Longxiang, and Xia Wanjin had all become saints. Only Chu Yang had not. The four of them worked together to mock Chu Yang. Such an opportunity was rare, and they cherished it. Especially since Chu Yang could not beat them up in front of others because he wanted to hide his strength. Therefore, they had to do their best to mock Chu Yang. Xia Wanjin already knew Chu Yang's strength. Although the parrot and Xiong Longxiang did not know, they were very sure that Chu Hang was still as powerful as ever. He could beat them up as if they were little children. They would not doubt Chu Hang's strength even if they were beaten to death. They were confident that they were not fools. "These people really know me well. They are taking advantage of this opportunity to be impudent." Chu Yang was laughing in his heart, but his face was dark. However, the parrot and the others were not afraid at all. They were just on guard against Chu Hang's dirty tricks. Their faces were full of disdain, as if to say, "Chu Hang, we already know your method." The pretty boy Wei Xian was a bit depressed. He felt that he could not keep up with the pace. "Hehe, little ones, I will leave you some face in front of everyone today. So, you can go a bit further." Chu Yang laughed sinisterly. It was obvious that he was going to settle accounts later. The parrot and the others immediately split up. Each of them flattered Chu Yang, and then beat each other up. The atmosphere was foul. Time passed silently. People saw all kinds of shamelessness and all kinds of weirdos. They also saw a happy meeting. However, they did not see the scene they were looking forward to. Chu Yang and the others were too impudent. They were so unscrupulous in front of so many people. It was obvious that they were ignoring everyone in Taijing. Therefore, many people could not help but feel angry. Shangguan Bao was the most furious. His head was also hurting. His original mission was to show all kinds of scenes of a pile of shit entering the city and let that pile of shit suffer all kinds of humiliation. He might even be scared witless and scared to death. But now, where was the safety of a pile of shit entering the city? First, there was Lu Ti punching Zhenguanxi, and then there were the 5 clowns, causing chaos and chaos. This was simply like a group of bandits entering the city, acting unbridled and rampant. Everything was too different from what his master had planned. He felt that he would have to wear flowery clothes when he returned. As for his master, he was probably flying into a rage right now and couldn't wait to kill someone. I can't let this go on. I have to suppress that piece of shit's arrogance and show off my young master's might. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Shangguan Bao was extremely anxious when he thought of this. He was like an ant on a hot pan. He rolled up his sleeves and stomped his foot. Dong! The earth quaked, and a loud sound attracted everyone's attention. The farce of Parrot and the others came to an abrupt end. After successfully attracting everyone's attention, Shangguan Bao glared at Chu Yang like an angry lion. He sneered, "That piece of shit, how long are you going to keep emitting that stench? You're saying that you're an excellent poop picker?" Chu Yang opened his mouth. Parrot, Xia Wanjin, and the pretty boy Wei Xian could not help but burst into laughter. Shangguan Bao's face turned red. He finally realized that it was better to call him a country bumpkin. Belittling one's enemy was the same as belittling oneself. He felt as if he had lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. It was extremely vexing. The words poop picker caused him to suffer internal injuries and spit out a mouthful of old blood. When there's a lot of shit, someone has to clean it up. Unfortunately, I happened to be that person. Chapter 2473. A pile of shit. This was worse than a wild dog. It was even worse than a wild dog's humiliation. Chu Yang's eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. He sized up Shangguan Bao and said, "Buddha said that the world is what you see as a person. It seems that not only are you not an excellent poop picker, but you are also a pile of shit. The world is full of shit." After a pause, he sneered. "Is this the standard of Taijing City? Their eyes are full of shit and their mouths are full of shit. They don't have the slightest bit of etiquette. They don't have the slightest bit of cultivation. Even a shameless king like me can't stand it. Sigh, it's really distressing. What should I do to be the worst? Where exactly is the worst limit? Who can talk about shamelessness?" Haha. The gigolo Wei Xian and the parrot laughed like crazy. Chu Yang's questioning of the limits of shamelessness was too ridiculing. Shangguan Bao's face twitched. This was too fucking powerful. That cheap mouth was too cheap. In any case, he couldn't bear the crime of being called one of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. He was already forced into a dead end. He could only grit his teeth and say, "Do I need any etiquette to a beast? Who is your father?" Chu Yang's sudden question stunned Shangguan Bao. Then, he realized that something was wrong. "Who is your mother?" Shangguan Bao felt even more uneasy. He felt that the other party was about to make a big move. Chu Yang smiled at him. Then, with a sympathetic and pitiful expression, he said, "Your parents. Do they know that you are so stupid? Do they know that your life in this world is so difficult and painful? What a beast." Shangguan Bao's vision went black. When he could see again, he roared, "How am I stupid?" Chu Yang only smiled. "You don't need any etiquette to a beast. But you spat shit at a beast. You are either sick or stupid." After a pause, he smiled even more happily. "I said that you are stupid. Is there a problem?" Damn. Shangguan Bao really wanted to kill someone. He had already experienced the sharpness of Chu Yang's cheap mouth. He didn't want to be entangled with such a slut anymore. He directly ordered the people behind him to tear down a banner. The contents of the banner instantly jumped into everyone's eyes. It was very simple. It was a beauty poem. After Chu Yang glanced at it, he quickly understood. He came for Shangguan Lan, so this beauty was naturally Shangguan Lan. Therefore, this beauty poem was naturally written for Shangguan Lan. He immediately understood the other party's plan. Shangguan Lan was such a beauty. It would be difficult to describe her beauty with words. In this world, there were many beautiful things that were simply indescribable. Words seemed very pale and powerless in front of them, especially for a stunning beauty like Shangguanlan. Chu Yang was sure that if his poem wasn't stunning enough and didn't match Shangguanlan's beauty, it would definitely not be recognized by people. Especially when people discriminated and prejudiced against him, it would be even more so. Moreover, if he wrote a poem to praise Shangguanlan, there would definitely be many people who wanted to flatter him and win Shangguanlan's favor. Therefore, when this question came out, there would definitely be many people who were eager to get into action. If Chu Yang was not as good as them, once he was defeated, he would be firmly trampled under their feet. There were not only the 6 great young masters in Taijing City, especially with the imperial examination approaching, who knew how many geniuses would gather. It could be said that there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Any one of them would be very impressive. Therefore, with such a question, Chu Yang felt that the other party was full of malice and deep calculation. They were trying to shake his relationship with Shangguanlan. Chapter 2474. What a good scheme. Chu Yang instantly knew the difficulty of this question. Not only did he have to compose a good poem, he had to surpass the 6 great young masters, surpass everyone in Taijing City, and even surpass everyone in the world. The other party had only given him such a question and he had no choice but to become the enemy of the entire world. This method could be said to be deliberate. Fortunately, he did not really care. He had already thought of becoming the enemy of the entire world. When he really encountered it, he just smiled. "Who is your father? Who is your mother?" Chu Yang suddenly said these 2 words, causing Shangguan Bao to be stunned. He was very puzzled in his heart. What the hell is this country bumpkin doing? Could it be that my parents have something to do with this? Oh, I understand. You don't have a father or mother, so you don't have a surname or a name. Chu Yang expressed sympathy and pity. So pitiful. Not only are you stupid, you don't have a father or mother, and you don't have a surname or a name. Tragic, it's really too tragic. Shangguan Bao felt as if he had been hit in the back of his head. He finally understood and cursed in his heart. Wasn't it just asking for his name? Why did he have to drag his parents into this? This piece of shit was definitely a scoundrel among scoundrels. He would never let go of his parents. You're just a piece of shit. You don't have the qualifications to know my name. Shangguan Bao roared with his thick neck. His face and neck were red. Oh, so it's something that can't be seen. Chu Yang snapped his fingers and suddenly understood. I understand. If you can't win, then run. After all, there's no loss, right? Bullshit. I, your Lord Leopard, will never change my name. Shangguan Bao felt that the bastard in front of him wanted to dig out his heart and lungs with every sentence. He truly regretted sympathizing with this bastard. So you're really a dog? Chu Yang was amazed and narcissistically praised himself. I actually guessed it right. I'm really a genius. Waha. Leopard was equal to dog. Therefore, he was a dog. Shangguan Bao understood Chu Yang's logic very well. He felt a burst of depression in his heart. He was humiliated, but he couldn't refute it. He really was a dog, Shangguan Can's dog. He also completely surrendered, trying to avoid Chu Yang's cheap mouth, and pulled the topic back. That piece of shit. It seems that you can't make such a beauty poem at all, am I right? Who are you? Chu Yang looked at Shangguan Bao and asked with a smile, please tell me, what qualifications do a dog like you have to ask me to answer questions? Is it because your dog meat is more delicious? Haha. The parrot and the others laughed like crazy, especially the parrot. It had been a long time since he had seen Chu Yang act so lowly. This piece of shit must have done it on purpose. He already knew my identity, but he deliberately mocked and humiliated me like this. Shangguan Bao felt as if his chest had been struck by a heavy hammer. His chest caved in and he felt a sharp pain in his heart. He felt so miserable. He was just a dog, but he was doing what a human should do. He was even being hit by a stick and a hammer. He was not on the same level as that piece of shit. That piece of shit might be the grandson-in-law of Duke Ju's residence in the future. I'm from Duke Ju's residence. Is that clear enough? Who is Duke Ju? Hua. The crowd was in an uproar, and they were shocked. That Chu Yang didn't even put Duke Ju in his eyes, or did he really not know who Duke Ju was? Shangguan Bao's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He said coldly, "Young master asked me to test you. If you can't even pass this test, don't even think about taking a step into Duke Ju's residence." Chapter 2475. Yuan %%. Shangguan Bao couldn't take it anymore and cursed in his heart. He really wanted to beat this bitch up, but he didn't dare to. Although this bitch was only in the Nirvana realm, she was very powerful and her methods were unpredictable. She could suppress the entire East continent by herself. Even if he was a Ninth Order saint, if they were to fight, he might not be a match for him. Moreover, even if he won, Shangguan Lan would feel sorry for this bitch. He would have to wear flowery clothes and his master wouldn't dare to say no. She wouldn't even dare to fart. It's so hard to be a dog. Shangguan Bao finally realized one of the biggest truths of the world. Is this young master's idea? Young master, who is your young master? Again. Shangguan Bao gritted his teeth and said word by word, Shangguan Can. Shangguan Can? Oh, so it's my future brother-in-law. Thank you for telling me. My brother-in-law deserves a beating. Chu Yang clasped his hands behind his back. Then, he turned around and asked with great doubt, "Please tell me, does my brother-in-law have the qualifications to make my brother-in-law do this and that? Do I owe him anything?" Chu Yang didn't give Shangguan Can any face. Shangguan Bao was stunned. He obviously didn't expect this. Then, he didn't find it strange anymore. This country bumpkin was so arrogant. How could he be afraid of his young master? He also realized how difficult it was to do something that seemed easy. In other words, this country bumpkin made everything that was easy extremely difficult. This is also master and madam's idea. Chu Yang smiled and said, "So it's my future father-in-law and mother-in-law. Look at you, why did you beat around the bush? Why didn't you tell me earlier? After all, we're going to be a family in the future. It's not good to hurt our relationship." Shangguan Bao only snorted coldly. He heaved a long sigh of relief and said to himself, "I finally did it." It wasn't easy, but the moment Chu Yang spoke, his heart started to beat faster. "However, I am very skeptical of what you said. My future father-in-law and mother-in-law are very fond of me. They would definitely not make things difficult for me." After a pause, Chu Yang continued, "But this is also a good thing. I can take the opportunity to show off my peerless talent to my future father-in-law and mother-in-law." "That's right, that's it." After saying that, he teased Shangguan Bao, "Don't be so nervous. Isn't it just a twist? Is there a need for you to be so nervous?" Haha. Parrot and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter again. Chu Yang was playing with Shangguan Bao. They reckoned that Shangguan Bao was most likely only left with half his life. Many people finally saw what kind of person the legendary Chu Yang was. At the very least, that mouth of his was extremely powerful, almost able to make people spit out blood, depressing them to death. "Little doggy, seeing that this divine bird is acquainted with you, this divine bird will teach you a lesson." After the parrot laughed, it said to Shangguan Bao, "Whenever you see Chu Hang, just kneel before him. Don't give him a chance to make you kneel. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable because the process will be too painful." Shangguan Bao could only curse in his heart. He was bullied by a country bumpkin, and now he was bullied by a bird. However, he felt that the damn bird's words were simply wise. "Everyone." At this time, Chu Yang had already cupped his fists to the crowd and said, "In a moment, I will show off my shocking talent. Just watch and don't compare yourself to me. Otherwise, you will feel inferior." Chapter 2476. Grind the ink. Shangguan Bao didn't want to grind the ink for Chu Yang, but in the end, he could only do it obediently. Not only did he prepare the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, but he also prepared a writing desk and so on. Otherwise, that bitch wouldn't be able to find any flaws or excuses. But he thought too much. Chu Yang didn't need to do that at all. He didn't even need to think about it. While people were talking, he was already writing. It's definitely not easy to write a poem for the divine fragrance girl. What kind of poem can describe the beauty of the divine fragrance girl? Even the words divine fragrance girl are blasphemous to her. Yes, it's very difficult. Especially that country bumpkin has to do better than others. Otherwise, it's useless at all. If he's not as good as others, what will the divine fragrance girl think? Hehe, I think we can think about it carefully. Many people saw this and laughed sinisterly. When many people were still talking, Chu Yang had already written the poem. They turned to ridicule Chu Yang for being ignorant and stupid. Arrogant, simply arrogant to the extreme. He didn't even have to think before he started writing. Humph, wait for the joke. This country bumpkin probably doesn't know the hidden mystery. When he finds out, it'll be too late. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin. He thinks he's invincible in the East Continent for a long time. He's really stupid. Shangguan Bao was actually surprised. He never thought that Chu Yang would write directly. Because of this, he even suspected that Shangguan Can's question was a little too easy. But on second thought, this was impossible, so he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. You piece of shit, you can be arrogant for now. Very soon, I'll be able to see your extremely wretched state, or even your face that looks like a corpse. At that time, I'd like to see how arrogant you can be. While he was sneering in his heart, Chu Yang had already stopped writing. Then he saw the poem on the paper. The clouds think of clothes, the flowers think of the face, the spring breeze brushes the railing, the dew is thick. If we did not meet at the top of the Jade Mountain, we would have met under the moon at the Jade Pavilion. Immediately, the words Jade Mountain, Jade Pavilion, and moonlight appeared in Shangguan Bao's mind. A beautiful face with a human face appeared in his mind, but her appearance was not clear. After that, in the celestial land, in the jade pool, he faintly saw her appearance. She seemed to be a floating fairy, but also seemed to be a goddess under the divine moon. A fairy was not enough to describe her, nor was a goddess. Only the combination of the two could describe her appearance. At this moment, Shangguan Bao couldn't help but think of Shangguan Lan's appearance. He was Shangguan Can's servant, so he had naturally seen Shangguan Lan's face before. However, after seeing it once, he didn't dare to raise his head when he saw Shangguan Lan again. Even though he had only seen Shangguan Lan's beautiful face once, it seemed to be carved into his mind. It became clearer and clearer, and he couldn't forget it at all. So beautiful. Shangguan Bao was completely immersed in his imagination and couldn't help but exclaim. When he came back to his senses, he shouted in his heart, "Oh no!" He suddenly woke up, but found that the whole place was silent, without a trace of sound. His heart sank completely. It's over, it's completely over. Although he was not very proficient in poetry, and he didn't know whether such a poem was good or bad, the reaction of the crowd was the best proof and the best answer. Such a poem was amazing. Chapter 2477. If young master knew that the plan he put in so much effort to come up with was not worth mentioning at all, and was even worse than bullshit, how would he feel? Shangguan Bao found it hard to imagine. At this moment, he suddenly thought of what Chu Yang had said about Lu Tihei punching Zhen Guanxi. Would that be the case? Would young master's reaction be that big? He realized that that pile of shit was really scary. It had hinted at this from the very beginning. If he thought this way, his young master would definitely think of it. Chu Yang was Lu Tihei, and his young master was Zhen Guanxi, the dirty genius. When he realized that this was gradually becoming a reality, he was suddenly at a loss for words. Chu Yang broke the silence in the field. He cupped his fists and said to everyone, "How was it? Was I so handsome that I charmed thousands of girls just now?" After a pause, he smiled at Shangguan Bao and said, "What do you think?" Chu Yang's smile made Shangguan Bao feel cold all over for some reason. He felt that if he gave a bad answer, he would probably be consigned to eternal damnation. This country bumpkin definitely has something up his sleeve. Shangguan Bao did not praise or belittle him and said, "I'm just a dog. You should say this, please note that I'm just a dog. Don't make things difficult for me." Damn, Shangguan Bao really wanted to fight this country bumpkin to the death. Saying it so bluntly hurt his self-esteem. What are you staring at? Do you still have self-esteem? Chu Yang further embarrassed Shangguan Bao and said with a smile, "You don't have self-esteem. Isn't this the truth? I can't afford to offend you, but I can still hide. Shangguan Bao immediately shut up. Are you trying to say that I can't afford to offend you, but I can still hide? How could he not tell the truth? With a plop, Shangguan Bao was not paying attention. He tripped and fell over. Waha! Chu Yang was overjoyed. He put his hands on his hips and laughed wildly. Little guy, you must be very hurt. I'm known as the invincible mouth cannon. You've seen the power of my mouth cannon. Why aren't you kneeling down and worshipping me? After a pause, he said to the crowd, as the saying goes, illness comes from the mouth, and disaster comes from the mouth. Let me remind you all, when you speak later, you have to think about what you want to say. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious. This dog will be your end. You're threatening us, country bumpkin. Even if this poem of yours isn't a piece of shit, do we still have to praise you? Who do you think you are? You're just a piece of shit. Calling you a country bumpkin is already praising you. What kind of bullshit poem did you write? Didn't you see that your poem was so bad that it shocked everyone? As soon as Chu Yang's words fell, many people in the crowd began to hurl insults at him. Many of them were very harsh to the ears and completely denied such a poem. However, no one dared to speak up for justice. This was obviously a battle between Chu Yang and the 6 great childs of the capital. It was extremely dangerous, and no one dared to get involved. That piece of shit, did you see that? Everyone didn't say anything. This means that they all agreed with my words. Since he was about the same age as Shangguan Bao, he was very eye-catching. He directly and overbearingly made the judgment for everyone. Moreover, looking at him, it seemed that if anyone dared to undermine him at this time, he would make that person beg for death. He directly pointed at Chu Yang and said, "You're not only a piece of shit, the poem you wrote is also a piece of shit." That's right, a piece of shit can only write a piece of shit. A piece of shit stinks unbearably. You don't know that you're going to suffocate everyone, yet you're still so proud of yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. Extremely laughable. You have the nerve to use such a poem to make a fool of yourself. Buzz. Chapter 2478. How awe-inspiring. The man from before was not afraid at all. He walked out with his chest puffed out and sneered at Chu Yang. That piece of shit, you still want to be fierce? What a joke. In Taijing City, if it wasn't for Duke Ju's residence, you would be a dead man at any moment. Chu Yang ignored the man and stared at the people who jumped out just now. He laughed. This marshal will remember you. That piece of shit, you really dare to be fierce. The man sneered. It seems that you really want to die. Chu Yang turned his head and looked at the man. The man's face was not bad, but his legs were too eye-catching. His legs were stretched out, as if he was holding an egg. Ha ha. He immediately laughed out loud and directly launched a personal attack. That thing, what's wrong with your leg? Are you holding an egg or holding an egg? Whoosh. The man's blood rushed to his face. Ha ha. Parrot and the others laughed crazily. Chu Hang's mouth was really cheap, and it often exceeded people's expectations. They thought that he would be angry, but they did not expect him to make them not know whether to laugh or cry. Even Shangguan Bao almost couldn't hold back his laughter. The man was so angry that he trembled, but Chu Yang did not pay attention to him. Who's your father? Who's your mother? Ha ha. Shangguan Bao could not help but laugh in his heart. That country bumpkin is here again. He had tasted that feeling before. He did not know why he was happy when he saw others suffer. Country bumpkin, it seems that you really want to die. The man clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Come and kill me, I'm so scared. Chu Yang said sarcastically, but the man did not dare to move, nor did he dare to incite the others to rush up and chop Chu Yang up. Who's your father? Who's your mother? Chu Yang saw through the man's lies and said again, now, can you tell me? This person only glared at Chu Yang, causing Chu Yang to mock him even more. Who are you trying to impress? You're just a dog, and your master is just a monster that can't see the light of day. What are you doing here? You're not worthy. Whoosh. He suddenly moved with extreme speed. Soon after, there was a muffled bang. That person covered his head with both hands and squatted down in pain, groaning. Bang bang bang. Chu Yang gave him a good beating. Then, he stripped him naked and hung him up to dry. Moreover, he was not the only one. Those who had spoken earlier were all in the same situation. Their vitals were attacked, and they were stripped naked and hung up to dry. A beautiful scene was immediately formed. Boom. The entire scene was in an uproar and filled with disbelief. Chu Yang actually still dared to act in such a manner under the situation of being surrounded by enemies from all sides. Wasn't he afraid of arousing the rage of everyone and being attacked by a group, causing him to die a graveless death? Shangguan Bao broke out in cold sweat as he watched. Ha. The parrot, pretty boy Wei Xian, and the others laughed crazily again. Chu Hang, that bitch, was acting up again. His temper was simply rotten to the core. Of course, they knew that many people would think that Chu Yang was just launching a sneak attack. Otherwise, with his Nirvana realm strength, how could he deal with people who were much stronger than him? However, they clearly knew that this was just a facade of the Chu clan. It was because everyone thought so that Chu Hang would do such a thing. With Chu Hang's strength, it was too easy for him to deal with those people. I will destroy you on behalf of the moon. When Chu Yang faced that scene and said such a sentence with a righteous face, the parrot and the others laughed until they almost exploded. I am a handsome young warrior in the eastern wilderness, and I will fight for justice, Chu Yang added. Shangguan Bao wanted to laugh, but he did not dare. He forced himself to endure, and his face actually cramped up, causing him to grimace in pain. At this time, Chu Yang said to the person holding the egg, "Who is your father? Who is your mother?" Chapter 2479. Who is your young master? You will be scared to death if I tell you, Chen Xiaoqi said ferociously. You better listen carefully. My young master is Chen Burang from the Chen family. Chen Burang. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment and then laughed crazily. Chen Burang, the loser. Ha. You. Chen Burang was shocked. He never thought that his young master would be defeated by this piece of shit. But he soon found another life-saving straw. Eldest young master, I will not forgive you. Chen Buchuan. Chu Yang already knew about the eldest young master of the Chen clan, one of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital city from Xia Wanjin. He smiled and said, the so-called 6 great young masters of Tai capital city are also unbearable. Especially this Chen Burang and Chen Buchuan, they are simply too inferior. If my clan had such a stupid servant, I would be ashamed to death. The crowd was speechless. Chen Xiaoqi was too unbearable and damaged the reputation of Chen Buchuan and the Chen family. It was obvious that this country bumpkin was not afraid of Shangguan Can, one of the 6 young masters. How could he be afraid of Chen Buchuan? However, Chen Xiaoqi used Chen Buchuan and even Chen Burang to scare the country bumpkin. Come to think of it, Chen Buchuan's ability to lie with a straight face is absolutely amazing. Chu Yang rubbed his chin and pretended to be scared. Then, he continued to spoof, it's okay to lie with your eyes wide open. But, this marshal had never thought that the world could be so terrible. It's so bad that it's going to kill me. Chen Buchuan and the Chen family were degraded to a mouse hole because of Chen Xiaoqi's clumsiness. From today onwards, the Chen clan would more or less be affected. After many people realized this, they couldn't help but be shocked. This country bumpkin seemed to be very strange, but what he did was not completely random. Country bumpkin, the book of songs has not been revealed. What can your poem prove? Yes, the book of songs is the standard to judge a poem. What's the use of feeling good about yourself? It's ridiculous that you don't understand such common sense. Chen Xiaoqi's fate was tragic, but it didn't scare the others. Soon, 3 more people stood up. Therefore, Chu Yang was not surprised. He was definitely going to be stopped. At this moment, he was just waiting for clowns to jump out one after another, and from this, he could determine each of his enemies. Even though Xia Wanjin said that the 6 great young masters of Tai capital wanted him dead, he still had to verify it. There were many jealous people in this world, but those who were jealous were not necessarily evil. Now, he had more or less confirmed it. Because of the Great Harmony Sutra, after he undid his seal, His perception of the human heart had become very sharp. The truth was just as Xie Wanjin had said. "Who is your father and mother?" Chu Yang suddenly felt a little lazy. He had tossed around and messed around a little too much. He suddenly felt a little tired, so at this moment, he was also a little impatient. Wang family's Wang Kuan, Xie Dong of the Xie family, Wu Yuan of the Wu family. These three people all introduced themselves. They were respectively from the Wang, Xie, and Wu families. Chu Yang glanced at the three people. He had no interest in playing pranks anymore. He said indifferently, "Chen Xiaoqi's example happened right in front of your eyes, but you didn't take it as a lesson. From this, it seems that Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobo, Wu Xian, and Chen Buchuan are all of the same level. All of them are unworthy. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital are also unworthy. Ridiculous. Does questioning equate to being unworthy? The Book of Songs hasn't appeared yet, and you don't let people question it. Country bumpkin, you're really domineering. If that's the case, then you're the only country bumpkin who's unworthy." Wang Kuan, Xie Dong, and Wu Yuan's rebuttal caused an uproar among the crowd. After all, the Book of Songs was the standard to judge whether a poem was good or bad. It was normal that the Book of Songs hadn't been criticized. Although Chu Yang's poem was very good, and even stunning, it was still not good. Chu Yang looked at all of this coldly. None of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital showed themselves. They only sent a few servants, and they actually wanted to take him in. "Then I'll thank you for looking down on me. I'll definitely give you a good start." Chapter 2480. The crowd clamored and clamored, with all kinds of doubts and attacks. Chu Yang didn't say a word, didn't laugh, and just listened quietly. Then, in the void behind him, a dense fog suddenly appeared, and a corner was revealed, as if it was the entrance to the celestial world. This, instigator Wang Kuan, Xie Dong, and Wu Yuan's eyes widened, and in an instant, the crowd fell silent. As expected, how can this bitch not have a backup plan? He wants the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families to show their ugly side, then he will make a move. In this way, if they can't see such a simple thing, the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families are really not up to standard. Shangguan Bao wasn't too surprised. A bitch like Chu Yang was full of bitches. The Book of Songs was the standard to judge poems. How could he not know such common knowledge? The dogs of the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families bit the bitch too quickly, thinking that the bitch is easy to bully. Their teeth are about to break, and they are crying out in pain, showing their ugly side. How laughable. The more Shangguan Bao thought about it, the faster he broke out in cold sweat. If he was like the 4 dogs, he would be in trouble. The crowd became even more silent. In the void behind Chu Yang, it was like a picture scroll was slowly unfolding. When the crowd's gaze fell into the dense fog, they seemed to be pulled, and then it was as if they were in the celestial court. The heavenly soldiers and generals were imprinted in their eyes, and the group of immortals also appeared one by one. In the center was a supreme figure, who seemed to be the celestial emperor of the celestial court. The scene quickly changed again, and turned to a place full of immortals. Suddenly, a woman who looked like a fairy and a goddess was shrouded in the fog, and her face couldn't be seen clearly. But at first glance, everyone was lost in thought, and their minds were completely immersed in it. The clouds think of clothes, the flowers are compatible. When the crowd saw the beautiful woman who looked like a fairy and a goddess, a song was immediately heard. The rhythm was novel, and it was completely different from what the crowd had heard before. Surprisingly, the song was the poem that Chu Yang had just composed. There was no doubt that the singer was also a stunning beauty. This song should only exist in the heavens. How many times can one hear it in the mortal world? Despite such a shocking phenomenon, there was no clamor from the crowd. All of them were immersed in the celestial music. It was like a dream, and they had completely forgotten about themselves and everything else. The spring breeze brushes the balustrade, and the dew is thick. If we did not meet at the top of the Jade Mountain, we would have met under the moon in the Jade Pavilion. It was just that this intoxicating song was too short, and it suddenly stopped. Everyone immediately realized that this song was definitely not finished, and there were more to come. Immediately, there were sounds of great regret from the crowd. How did it end so quickly? There must be more. What a pity, what a pity. Such a beauty, such a celestial voice, yet I was only able to listen to a short part of it before it was abruptly cut off. It almost drove me mad. It is indeed a pity. Chu Yang only wrote one poem and did not continue the rest. Naturally, the celestial music will come to an abrupt end. To be able to listen to this, you should be satisfied. If not for what happened today, how could we have encountered such a fortunate event? How could we have been able to hear such celestial music? There were even more people discussing and lamenting, and their voices were even noisier. Chu Yang was naturally not surprised by this. In his previous life, the song of purity and peace had already been sung by someone. At this moment, it was naturally novel for it to appear here. Moreover, the power of literature was even more beautiful and moving than in his previous life. Moreover, it was linked to Shangguan Lan, a beautiful and talented woman that everyone in Taijing City knew. The effect was naturally better. Not to mention the others, even he was entranced by it. I wonder how Lan Lan will sound when she sings the song of purity and peace. Chapter 2481. In the blink of an eye, the scene behind Chu Yang completely disappeared. The book of songs appeared and took in the poem, causing the clamorous crowd to suddenly become silent again. It was at least a first-grade poem, without a doubt. But what they found strange was that the book of songs didn't disappear for a long time. It kept appearing behind Chu Yang. When Chu Yang moved his pen again, they understood and immediately exploded again. What? That Chu Yang hasn't even composed a poem yet, but the book of songs has already determined that his poem must be a first-grade poem. This is really too miraculous. The poem hasn't been written yet, but it's already a first-grade poem. Who in the world can do this, and who can get this kind of treatment? It's hard to believe. Seeing all this with my own eyes, it feels very illusory, very unreal. It's also clear that I'm standing on the ground, but it's like I'm stepping on clouds. It's like my soul has left my body. Hearing the incredulous voices of the people, the parrot, Xia Wanjin, pretty boy Wei Xian, Liu Yunpeng, and Xiong Longxiang couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Their expressions were extremely strange, to the extent that the parrot didn't laugh wildly at this time and show off. Speaking of which, the five of them were also a bit stunned. They knew that Chu Hang's talent in martial arts was exceptional, and no one could compare to him. But they never thought that Chu Hang's talent in literary arts was also like this. Being a master in both literary and martial arts was truly unprecedented. He was invincible under the heavens and lonely like snow. This divine bird finally knows why this divine bird can remember high energy warning ahead, a pear blossom suppressing begonia, and so on. It turns out that this divine bird also has a huge pit here, so deep that I can't see a bird. The parrot made a concluding speech, which made Liu Yunpeng and the others look at each other even more in dismay. Then, they smiled bitterly. If they wanted to compare with Chu Hang, then they really would have to throw them away. Then, they really didn't need to live. I finally know why you know that bastard's name is Chu Hang. Pretty boy Wei Xian said gloomily, this bastard is really a huge moving pit. Whoever sees him will feel inferior and want to find a piece of tofu to kill themselves with. He's really a scammer. You'll get used to it soon. You will soon become numb. This is a stage that we have to go through. That's how we survive in our inferiority. It's so fucking difficult. Pretty boy Wei Xian, he was completely at a loss for words. He was just lamenting about his current feelings. He would soon become arrogant, but he never expected Xia Wanjin to make such a direct judgment. He could only feel inferior for 10,000 years. At this time, Chu Yang had already composed a song. Her watery waist was like a girdle, like a piece of black muslin wrapped around a cold jade. Floating in the air, she has her own charm. Looking back, Fen Dai is vulgar. When the fog is closed, no one can peek through the window. Carriages and horses are free in front of the door. After the ceremony, the altar was quiet in spring. The ground was littered with red blossoms and the crows cawed. When the poem was completed, it immediately manifested a dreamlike fairyland and peerless beauties. After that, All the scenes disappeared and the poem was also collected into the Book of Songs. However, the Book of Songs had yet to disappear. People saw that Chu Yang had already composed another poem. Luo Pu doubted back to snow which mountain like dawn cloud seeing a devastating city today for the first time, a devastating state once heard coquettish eyes followed by embarrassment, red lips parted with laughter wind rolled thistle leaves belt sunshine pomegranate skirt naturally, the madman toils in the air flut. The parrot exploded. It couldn't take it anymore and poked Chu Yang with its wing. Chu Hang, don't go too far. You want to prove that this divine bird is an idiot. That's absolutely impossible. Hashuan percent Hashuan. Pretty boy Wei Xian directly cursed, that thing, you better stop before going too far. Otherwise, this pretty boy will fight it out with you. Chapter 2482. The parrot and the others were all very excited, cursing loudly, spittle flying everywhere, forming a strange scene, making people look very strange. They also immediately found the parrot and the others too cute. They unexpectedly saw injustice on the road, pulled out a knife to help, and shouted like this, upholding justice. These 5 things made the hearts of many people roar out. Many people in the crowd also couldn't stand it. It was a very difficult thing. That shameless person grabbed the brush and wrote 3 songs in one go. It made them feel incomparably bitter and made them realize that they were idiots. So showing off, too much. But Chu Yang seemed to be responding to the parrot and the others, waving the brush and the ink, he wrote 3 more words. First meeting in front of the grass stairs, meeting in the needle tower. Silk skirt fragrance, jade hairpin wind. Beautiful eyebrows green, bashful pink blushing. Long love of the blue railing dry shadow, hibiscus autumn water blooming. Blushing face congeals dew, learning to cry. The rosy clouds are cold and elegant, cloud hairpin curls slender branches. Charming and gentle immortal flower Gu, lithe spring willow can sleep. Deep in the jade tower, in front of the window. Dreaming of the fragrant grass night, singing the falling plum sky. The 3 words were written in one go, and they were all the same name, Immortal Linjiang, very arrogant. What was most infuriating was that this bastard didn't write a word in one go, but first wrote the first sentence of the 3 words, and then repeated it. Writing a word itself requires a lot of brain cells. This guy is good, writing 3 in one go. That's not all, he also divided the 3 words. This is not silent show-off, invisible show-off, what else can it be? Chu Hang, you are too much. Fraud, you want to prove that in the whole world, except for you, everyone is a fool? Bastard Taijing, bastard Shangguan Can, bastard Taijing 6 great young masters, what are you doing for no reason? Using your face as a stage, you let this fraud step on your face, showing off on the stage, you are very happy, right? The parrot and the other 4 once again shouted out what everyone was thinking. Especially the last sentence, many people actually agreed with it. If not for the provocation of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital, how could this Chu Hang have such an opportunity to show off and be so rampant? Wang Kuan, Xie Dong, Wu Yuan, and Chen Xiaoqi were the representatives of those who were stripped naked and hung up in a row. At this moment, their minds went blank. They froze on the spot, as if they were petrified. This freak, this super freak. How can there be such a person in this world? Should such a person exist in this world? Shangguan Bao broke out in cold sweat as he cursed in his heart. At this moment, he was very clear that the first 3 tests that his young master had carefully designed, the 3 tests that he was so proud of, were nothing but bullshit. His master would definitely suffer a heavy blow. Perhaps, he would secretly feel inferior to his master. To be exact, he had never seen such a crushing person, such a crushing blow. After Chu Hang's ruckus, the 6 great young masters of Tai capital had all been crushed once in terms of literary skills, and they would probably be completely crushed to the point that they would have no temper. It could be said that Chu Hang had already secured the first place in the literary test before the imperial examination had even begun. It could be said that he had killed many birds with one stone. Go back and inform the young master. What are you spacing out for? Are you stupid? Do you want me to kill you? Shangguan Bao secretly transmitted his voice to the people around him 3 times in a row, roaring angrily 3 times. Only then did the people around him come back to their senses and leave reluctantly. To be honest, this person really didn't want to miss such a scene, but he had no choice. However, when this person moved, it immediately became very eye-catching. After many people discovered this, they also quickly reacted and sent people to spread the news of this extremely bad situation. Chapter 2483. In Shangguan Khan's courtyard in Duke Ju's residence, in front of the painting of a pile of feces entering the city, the pile of feces in the painting was still steaming hot, and it still had all kinds of strange expressions on its face. It was still shocked by the magnificence of the painting, and its nerves were still numb. There was no sound at all, but there were two people. One was a servant who was trembling in fear, and the other was Shangguan Khan. At this moment, Shangguan Khan was like the pile of feces in the painting. He had all kinds of surprised expressions on his face. It was as if he was shocked by the boundless grandeur and the various unimaginable things in front of him that made his nerves numb. Crack, crack. It was as though the servant had just been fished out of an ice cave. The sound of his teeth chattering caused Shangguan Khan, who was frozen in place, to suddenly move slightly. Soon after, his eyes, which were filled with shock, suddenly erupted with two sharp gazes as he stared at the servant with a sure sound. Ah! The servant almost screamed. He was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. However, he didn't know what kind of force supported him, but he was able to hold on. At this moment, Shangguan Khan was too scary. If he couldn't hold on any longer, he might really die. Then tell me the whole story in detail, without leaving out a single detail. When Shangguan Khan's voice entered the servant's ears, he suddenly felt like he had fallen into an ice cave again. He couldn't help but shiver. Yes, young master. His voice was also trembling. That pile of shit said something in the beginning. Lu Tianqi punched Zheng Guangxi. The content was a little long. In the end, the servant told Shangguan Khan about the main plot and what he thought was the most important thing. When Shangguan Khan heard it, he immediately asked, Then, he wrote that poem. The clouds think of clothes and flowers, the spring breeze brushes the railings and the dew is thick. If we don't meet on top of the Jade Mountain, we will meet under the moon in the Jade Pavilion. Is this the poem? After the servant said it once, Shangguan Khan remembered it. It was because this poem was really amazing. After hearing it once, he could remember it completely. Every word seemed to be engraved in his mind. Shangguan Khan's cultivation was extraordinary. As a saint, he could fight against earthly sovereigns and even kill them. Logically speaking, with his powerful divine sense, there was no need for the servant to come back and report to him. He should have known everything, but in fact, this was not the case. There was a great restriction in Taijing City that greatly restrained a cultivator's spiritual sense. Otherwise, a cultivator with such a powerful spiritual sense would be able to know everything in the city and every family without any secrets. That would be a little abnormal, which was why the restriction was set up. However, this wasn't an absolute rule. Someone like Duke Ju, or those who wielded unparalleled strength, was an exception. Yes, young master. That piece of shit really didn't need to think and wrote such a poem in an instant. Until now, Shangguan Khan still could not believe that it was so easy to compose a first-grade poem. Yes, young master. In the Book of Songs, because of this poem, a scene of a fairyland appeared. The fairy even sang this poem with a very strange rhythm. Yes, young master. Are you sure? Very sure. The servant added, if not, why would this servant come back to report it? Suddenly, Shangguan Khan couldn't help but think of the scene where Lu Tianqi punched Zheng Guangxi. He immediately felt as if someone had punched him in the nose. His nose bridge was broken, and blood spurted out. Chapter 2484. At this moment, he seemed to have become the Zhuangyuan under the bridge, the poor Zheng Guangxi who slaughtered pigs, and the pile of shit became Lu Tihei who uprooted the weeping willow. He felt extremely frustrated. Shangguan Khan knew that he was not as capable as the pile of shit. After a while, he recovered and said to the servant again, after that, the pile of shit did not think at all and wrote 2 poems in a row. Yes, young master. The servant was flustered and uneasy. He stole a glance at his master and noticed that Shangguan Can's complexion was as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. His heart trembled and he hurriedly covered up his actions. Those 2 poems were also first-grade poems and they both showed miraculous signs. In the end, they were both included in the Book of Songs. Lu Tihei punched Zhen Guanxi. Immediately, Shangguan Can inexplicably thought of this and felt that he had become Butcher Zheng again. The pile of shit raised his fist and punched him in the eye. Immediately, he felt that his eyes were cracked and black pearls burst out. It was as if he had opened a colorful silk shop. Red, black, purple, and so on flooded his senses again. That pile of shit deliberately said this part of the book. Shangguan Can was very sure that the 3 poems were no different from Lu Tihei's 3 punches. The pile of shit wanted to use these 3 punches to crush his pride. The 3 poems were the same. He didn't feel satisfied after punching me 3 times, so he wanted to punch me 3 more times. Shangguan Can gritted his teeth. Then, he suddenly thought of something and immediately said, "The Book of Songs did not appear, right?" The servant trembled again and then said, "When I came back to report, the classic of CI had indeed not appeared yet. Let me ask you, did the Book of Songs appear in the end?" Shangguan Can lost his composure and roared at the top of his lungs. The servant was almost scared out of his wits and fell to the ground. "Young master, please spare my life. I came back in a hurry to report. I really don't know what happened in the end." Bang, bang, bang. The servant kowtowed on the ground again and again, making thumping sounds. Seeing this, Shangguan Can immediately knew that he had lost his composure. After restraining his emotions, he was a little bored and said lazily, "Get up. Thank you for sparing my life, young master." The servant kowtowed 3 more times before he stood up with a look of surprise on his face. He did not expect that his master would be able to control his anger and regain his composure in the end. "That piece of shit, did it write 3 more lyrics?" "Yes, young master. Remember that." The servant began to sweat again. Fortunately, Chu Yang's pile of shit was truly stunning enough. At that time, he was also focused enough, so he barely managed to remember it. How fortunate! He rejoiced in his heart and said, "Young master, I remember most of it, but I might not remember some parts accurately." Shangguan Can waved his hand and said impatiently, "It's fine. Just repeat it." After carefully recalling the 3 poems, the servant recited the 3 poems in full. "We met for the first time in front of the steps of Fighting Grass, and we met at the top of the needle threading tower. Everlasting love is like the dried shadow of a jade railing, when the lotus flowers bloom in autumn, charming and gentle immortal flowers, light and graceful spring willows can sleep." When Shangguan Can heard the 3 poems, the scene of Lu Tihei pulling up a weeping willow appeared in his mind again. The Lu Tihei in the story seemed to have walked out of the story at this moment. He crossed the river of time and space and appeared in front of Shangguan Can. He punched Shangguan Can's temple. Chapter 2485. Young master, are you all right? Shangguan Can regained his senses after hearing the concerned voice of the servant. However, he felt weak all over as if he had died. When he woke up again, the world seemed to have changed and he was extremely lonely. He had lost, completely lost to that pile of shit. He thought that his meticulous plan would have been extremely difficult. That pile of shit would definitely not be able to pass and would have been scared to death. However, none of this happened and he was the one who was humiliated. He had already realized that he could not compare to that pile of shit in terms of literary skills. To him, this was the most fatal blow. It completely destroyed his confidence and trampled on his pride and self-esteem. He was the grandson of Duke Ju, one of the 6 young masters of Taijing City. However, he was defeated by a pile of shit. Only Zhong Province had the soil of literary skills. Literary skills were prevalent in Zhong Province and had become one of the criteria to distinguish between high and low in Zhong Province. He grew up in Zhong Province but was completely inferior to that pile of shit in terms of literary skills. What kind of irony was this? Young master, actually, we are still all right. We are still in the upper echelons. The servant immediately explained Shangguan Bao's response and the situation of the servants of the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families. This made Shangguan can clearly understand that Chen Buchuan and the others were considered to be in the lower echelons by that pile of shit. However, he did not feel happy at all. It was only a matter of time before he became a lower echelon. Furthermore, when he asked Shangguan Bao to warn Chen Buchuan and the others, the 5 of them had reminded him not to lose face for Taijing City and for them. In the end, he completely messed up. What was there to be lucky about? Scram. The more Shangguan Can thought about it, the more humiliated and sullen he felt. In the end, he roared, causing the servant to piss his pants in fear and flee. Of course, Shangguan Can was not the only one who received the news. He was also not the only one who felt crushed and defeated. Many people in Taijing City felt the same. They felt that they were not as good as Chu Yang, this country bumpkin, in terms of literary skills. It was even more so for the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families. Chen Buchuan and the other 3 young masters felt the same way as Shangguan Can. It was as if they had all turned into Butcher Zheng, a poor family, who had been punched 3 times by Lu Tihei, a flowery monk. Chu Yang's definition of them as inferior made the 4 young masters of these 4 clans feel even more ashamed. The fact was that their servants were too unbearable. Therefore, it was only natural that they wouldn't be able to enter the ranks. Naturally, they would not admit it and would quibble, but they had no choice but to face this reality. If they were cultured and noble, then their servants would at least be cultured and have a certain level of intelligence. They would not be so unbearable. In short, this had become a stain on their record. Their own servants had to be tidied up no matter what, or else they would lose face in the future. Being inferior would become a reality. Among the 6 families, Qi Manor was the least affected. However, Huangfu Xian, who was one of the 6 young masters of the Qi Manor, was also furious. He also felt that he had been punched 3 times and was very defeated. He also felt that he was not Chu Yang's opponent in terms of literary skills. Huangfu Xian could not accept this kind of suppression in terms of literary skills at all. Literary skills were only prevalent in the central region. The 6 young masters should be far better than Chu Yang and should be able to suppress Chu Yang. However, it was the other way around. This became a great irony and a great humiliation. Chapter 2486. 3 poems and 3 lyrics, each for 3 beauties. The moment Chu Yang said this, the entire crowd burst into an uproar. This plaything was flirting with the number 1 talented lady and the number 1 beauty in Taijing City, and yet he was flirting with the other 2 beauties. This was truly intolerable and unforgivable. However, no one would shout at this playboy. It was truly a fly in the ointment. Shangguan Can had designed 3 tests outside of Duke Ju's residence, and there were a total of 9 poems and 9 lyrics at the end of the 3 tests. Chu Yang, this country bumpkin, was too fast when it came to composing poems and lyrics. It was so fast that it could scare people to death. At this point, this country bumpkin did not stop his flaunting. He started to write again. Jade dress slanted and clouds drooped, earlobes slanted and clouds drooped. Spring festival gala drowsy, drowsy late spring. Fine pear snow drops, falling snow pear flowers thin. Who is frowned shallow, who is frowned shallow? This was Su Sha's Bodhisattva Barbarian. Furthermore, this poem was written in palindromes, and it was included in the Classic of CI as soon as it was completed. The Classic of Songs and the Classic of CI, one seems to be his father, while the other is his mother. They have always been following behind him, never disappearing for even a moment. This really makes me feel indignant. What's the use of feeling indignant? This is still useful. #yuan %%. I'm scolding till my throat is smoking, but is this of any use? That country bumpkin is still showing off his talent. This is really intolerable. I'll find a chance to beat him half to death. Curses filled the air. Everyone was no longer surprised that Chu Yang could come up with a first-grade poem or lyrics so casually. Their surprise had all turned into curses, displeasure, and unwillingness. The willows in the courtyard are quiet, sleeping in the daytime are quiet, the willows in the courtyard are quiet. The sweaty clothes are cold, the sweaty clothes are fragrant. The hand is red, the bowl is cold, the hand is red. The smile of the man is long, the long silk lotus smiles. Chu Yang had already come up with the second poem. It was also Su Sha's Bodhisattva Barbarian, and it was also written in palindromes. It was also included in the classic of CI, but this was the summer's complaint after the spring complaint. Bastard country bumpkin, are you done yet? %. After cursing for a while, someone finally spoke his mind. I finally understand how that parrot felt. I have never seen such a smug person. This country bumpkin must prove that we are illiterate, that we are fools. I really can't stand him anymore. After passing the third test, Chu Yang had already arrived at the entrance of Duke Ju's residence. However, he didn't enter the residence and instead continued to show off, causing many people to feel an itch at the roots of their teeth. The parrot and the other four didn't say anything. Chu Hang was clearly trying to infuriate them to death, and was showing off to them to death. As his future son-in-law, it was understandable for him to flaunt his worth before Duke Ju, but this was definitely going overboard. It seemed that Chu Hang didn't understand this principle at all. Shangguan Bao also didn't know what kind of brain structure Chu Hang had. What he knew was that his master was probably on the verge of exploding upon seeing Chu Hang's smug attitude. Shangguan Can had failed to scam Chu Hang, and instead, he had helped Chu Hang achieve his goal. How would he feel? How would he feel? Shangguan Bao understood very well, and he was extremely understanding. Encountering such a troublemaker, anyone would be angered half to death, even if that person was one of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. Let's not talk about other things, just take the current situation as an example. His master had set up a total of 81 levels in the mansion, but Chu Kang had been playing outside for a long time without going in. His master's heart had probably been scratched by the cat's claws. Just as he thought, it was about time. Shangguan Can was rubbing his palms together, waiting for his revenge. He wanted to return the 3 punches that Lu Tihei threw at Shen Guanxi. But no matter how he held it in, that pile of shit still hadn't entered. He was so impatient that he was about to explode. Chapter 2487. Everyone, since I am so outstanding, won't my 3 future wives have to worry that I will attract bees and butterflies all the time? If I stay outside for a night and don't come back, won't they resent me? Spring, summer, autumn, and winter are all present. Isn't this very cool? I have completely written their inner thoughts, right? He smiled and bragged to everyone. He felt that he was lofty, bright, and very stalwart. Only a shameless person like him would be able to say and do something like that. Thus, in the crowd, many people rolled their eyes and gnashed their teeth in anger. Chu Yang didn't care at all. He coughed a few times and deliberately emphasized, these 4 lyrics are palindromes. As for what palindromes are, you don't need to ask because they are too advanced and difficult for you to understand. Moreover, the more you try to understand, the more it will hurt your self-esteem. Palindromes were really not found in the central province. Therefore, the people were really confused when they heard it. They felt that it was inexplicably high and mighty. Back to the topic, I am going to see my wife. Everyone, please clap to show your encouragement. Who would clap? Amidst the silence, Chu Yang finally walked towards Duke Ju's residence. It's coming, it's coming. This pile of shit is finally coming. In the residence, Shangguan Can's steely teeth were almost crushed. He felt that Chu Yang was slowly walking toward him. In his anger, he couldn't help but feel excited. He was so excited that he was trembling. It was as if he was going to take revenge. Clatter. Suddenly, Chu Yang stopped and turned around. He said to the crowd again, I suddenly thought of something. As he said that, he clasped his hands behind his back and raised his head. He said something that many people didn't understand. Moreover, it was very offensive. Back in the days, there were many animals holding a guitar and singing in front of a girl's house. They even shouted I love you so and so. Although I despised and disdained them, I still envied them from the bottom of my heart. After a pause, he rubbed his chin and said, why don't I also have such a thing to feel it? While Chu Yang was hesitating, Shangguan Can was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He could not help but want to bang his head against the wall. When the parrot and the others saw the expression on Chu Hang's face, especially when Chu Hang seemed to be thinking about something, they began to smirk. They were certain that Chu Hang was up to something, and sure enough, they were right. Suddenly, Chu Yang retreated more than 30 feet away. Then, with him as the center, a cube that was 3 meters in length, width, and height turned completely dark. His figure also disappeared, and only his voice could be heard. "Everyone, please allow me to show off for a while. I'm also a singer." After a howl, he continued, "I'm a singer. I want to hold a concert, a special concert for my future wife. Everyone, you're in for a treat." As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if the curtain of darkness had been pulled open. Everyone's gazes were immediately visible. Then, in the darkness, beams of light shone down on Chu Yang. They intertwined with each other and finally all shone on him. At this moment, he was holding a strange object in his arms. It seemed to be some kind of musical instrument, and he was posing in a way that he thought was cool, as if he was waiting to do something. In addition, there were also strange musical instruments behind him, each of which was controlled by a light shadow. Of course, these were all transformed by Chu Yang's magical power. Of course, no one could understand what Chu Hang was doing, and no one knew what he was doing. They only knew that he looked more and more despicable. Soon, the music started to play. To be exact, it was the sound of a guitar, drums, and bass. Then, oh! Chu Yang's short howl gave everyone a fright. Then, he started to sing with incomparable passion. No one was willing to suppress the anger and impulse in their hearts and curse this hypocrisy and falsehood. "I never believed that I had to kneel down and face my life, even if there was no one to help me. My whole life, I only relied on my hands. Let me howl crazily. Chu Hang, what the hell are you singing? I don't understand a single word." Chapter 2488. Many people couldn't help but nod their heads. The parrot shouted out their thoughts. They couldn't understand it at all. Moreover, the melody seemed even stranger, especially those who were proficient in music. They had never heard such a melody before. Chu Yang didn't care. It would be strange if the parrot could understand. The language he used was definitely not in the heavenly spirit world. After the song Insufferably Arrogant, he shouted a few more songs. Only the parrot could understand them, but when he opened his mouth, it was love or not love. Immediately, everyone's face turned red. They were very embarrassed. The next song after that was less love, but it seemed to have a special meaning. "I finally made this decision. I don't care what others say as long as you are sure I am willing to follow you to the ends of the earth. Courage." When the people heard this song, they finally heard the deceit. This was definitely sung by Chu Hang for the divine fragrance girl. "I love you for 10,000 years. Because how can there be vicissitudes in love? Love is only one word, I only say one word." After that, Chu Yang had various kinds of love. He was completely depraved and shameless. At first, many people's faces burned when they heard it. They couldn't accept the love between a man and a woman. There were too many kinds of love, so many that they were numb. "Don't be sad anymore, I see hope. Do you still have the courage to leave with me? Want to elope with you, to the farthest town. Want to elope with you, to be the happiest person." When the song Elope came out, it gave people a big fright. Pit Chu actually planned to elope with a talented girl who wanted divine fragrance. They also seemed to hear Chu Yang's helplessness from the lyrics. Their moods immediately smoothed out and they felt very comfortable. Serves him right. This is how it should be. All kinds of helplessness, all kinds of tragedies. When Shangguan Can heard Chu Hang, this piece of shit, announce his dirty thoughts to the public and announce his elopement to the world, he gritted his teeth and decided to guard against this piece of shit. He could not allow this piece of shit to succeed. He could not even think about eloping. After that, Chu Yang became even more vulgar. He sang Little Apple, Above the Moon, and all kinds of divine songs. He completely cleansed everyone's worldview, making everyone look at him as if they were looking at an alien. Chu Yang didn't care at all. He was having a great time. After his concert ended, he said to the crowd, "Everyone, you can see how passionate this marshal's love is. I accept fairies, goddesses, witches, geniuses, saintesses, and so on. 3 palaces and 6 courtyards can't fit them all. Is there a problem? After all, my love is so endless. What he received was all kinds of ridicule, curses, and all kinds of malicious words. However, Chu Yang could only smile. It was normal that they couldn't accept it. Who asked him to be so handsome? Everyone. This marshal forgot something. Today is the deadline for the imperial examinations. This marshal only cared about showing off and forgot about the proper business. He scratched his head and suddenly spoke. Everyone was caught off guard. There is a high alert ahead. Everyone, please come back to watch another day. This marshal will work harder so that everyone's trip will not be in vain. Whoosh. After throwing out these words, he madly ran in the direction of the hall of Wen in Taijing City. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace, leaving behind the astonished crowd and a pile of chicken feathers. Rumble. A loud sound suddenly came from Duke Ju's residence. The area around the entrance had completely collapsed. Amidst the billowing smoke, everyone saw Shangguan Can's constipated expression. Immediately, everyone understood that Chu Hang had played such a trick. Shangguan Can's all-out attack had hit empty air. He was so upset and sullen that he wanted to die. He was played like a fool. He, Shangguan Can, was completely played by Chu Hang. Everyone's expression was very interesting. Shangguan Can, one of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City, was actually played like a monkey. They also completely understood that Chu Hang's "I'm a singer" was actually teasing Shangguan Can. I just won't do it. So what? Come and hit me. Revenge breeds revenge. When will it ever end? What's the point of doing this? No matter what, he is still your future brother-in-law. Chu Hang has done this. How can he have a good life in the future? Chapter 2489. When Chu Yang went to the palace of Wen in Taijing City, the people in front of Duke Ju's residence didn't disperse. They were discussing and exclaiming with disbelief. Or, they were analyzing Chu Yang's plans, schemes, and so on. Different people had different points of focus. Naturally, they also had different opinions. Of course, not everyone was angry about such a matter. There were even some people who were rejoicing in other people's misfortune and were overjoyed. The 6 major forces in Taijing City didn't necessarily have no enemies and people who resented them. Xia Wanjin, Liu Yunpeng, Xiong Longxiang, and the gigolo Wei Xian left quietly. Chu Yang was not here. If they didn't leave, they would probably become the target of public criticism. The parrot returned to Shangguan Lan's side and reported the various things that happened today. When Shangguan Lan was in the Sky Academy in the East Continent, she knew that Chu Yang had provoked Ji Yinmeng. In the Middle Continent, Chu Yang had provoked the talented girl Xiaoxiang. She knew all about it from Chu Yang's letter. Only in a world like the heavenly spirit world, Chu Yang dared to tell Shangguan Lan everything. As for Shangguan Lan's reaction, he didn't know. This was also a task he gave to the parrot. The parrot felt that it was really pitiful. It had become a double agent. However, when it came back and saw that Shangguan Lan's face was still red, it was relieved. Things were not as bad as it thought. Therefore, it thought that Shangguan Lan must have fallen in love with Chu Li in all kinds of ways. It bombarded Shangguan Lan until she lost all sense of direction. Her heart had completely fallen for Chu Li. But in the end, the parrot still asked Shangguan Lan how she felt after listening to the song Elopement. She was not considerate enough and asked Shangguan Lan how she felt after listening to the song Elopement. Could it interview her? It even used its parrot voice to imitate Chu Keng's voice and sang Elope once. Then it put on its flowery clothes. The parrot's intestines were green with regret, and it wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. In the midst of the parrot's screams, Shangguan Can came to Duke Ju's study with an ugly expression. He understood that he was going to be severely reprimanded. Shangguan Bao and Duke Ju's old servant were waiting outside. At this moment, Shangguan Bao was also terrified, especially when he knew that the parrot was wearing floral garments and heard its ghostly wails and howls. He was afraid that he would not be able to escape. After his master was taught a lesson by Duke Ju, the chances of such a thing happening would be much higher. Duke Ju's study was extremely quiet. There wasn't any fragrance or tea, only the faint scent of ink. Duke Ju's expression was as kind as ever, and he had no intention of lecturing Shangguan Can at all. However, Shangguan Chanshin's heart skipped a beat, and he became even more uneasy and anxious. To be honest, he would rather see his grandfather with a dark face or an angry look. At least that would not be the worst-case scenario. This time, it was not the case. Obviously, his grandfather was very dissatisfied with what he had done today. He had even violated some principle or crossed some bottom line, which his grandfather could not tolerate. Can, you're here. Duke Ju was sitting in front of the desk with an ancient book in his hands. When he saw Shangguan Can, he couldn't help but smile. In fact, it seemed like he was fond of Shangguan Can. Shangguan Can became even more uneasy and fearful. Even though he was familiar with Duke Ju's appearance and had seen it often, it still made his hair stand on end. The reason was that he feared nothing except for his grandfather. Ever since he was young, his grandfather had always been the strictest to him. It could be said that the reason why he was so cultured and knowledgeable was all because of his grandfather. His profligacy and recklessness could be said to be a form of indulgence. It could be said that he was rebelling against his grandfather, as if his grandfather was his father. Chapter 2490. Can, are you afraid of me? Duke Ju's sudden words startled Shangguan Can. He immediately panicked and hurriedly said, "Grandfather, how can Kana be afraid of you? You're my grandfather." How could Duke Ju not know whether Shangguan Can was afraid or not? However, he didn't expose him. Instead, he said, "You should know that I sent your uncle to the Eastern Continent." Shangguan Can knew that Shangguan Xiao had been to the Eastern Continent, and he also knew the reason why his uncle went there, to warn that pile of shit, as well as to test him. "Chu Yang isn't afraid of me." Shangguan Can was taken aback by those words. He immediately understood the meaning behind his grandfather's words. Shangguan Bao asked that pile of shit to compose a poem and mentioned his grandfather. However, that pile of shit didn't give his grandfather any face. Instead, he gave his parents' face. From this, it could be said that the pile of shit wasn't afraid of his grandfather at all. That pile of shit is an outsider, and even he isn't afraid of grandfather. "I'm grandfather's grandson, so why should I be afraid of my grandfather? Grandfather can kill me, but can he eat me? Of course not." All of a sudden, Shangguan Can's heart relaxed, and he became much calmer. Looks like it's not bad to have such an opponent as a comparison. Even though Duke Ju didn't hear Shangguan Can's thoughts, he could sense the change in his grandson. He smiled in satisfaction, causing Shangguan Can to feel humiliated. He roared furiously, "That pile of shit isn't worthy of being compared to me." Duke Ju didn't reprimand him for his disdain toward Chu Yang. Instead, he asked, "I know that you want to make things difficult for him, but I didn't stop you. Do you know the reason for that?" This question came out of nowhere, and Shangguan Can was taken aback. He thought, "Grandfather, aren't you going to test that pile of shit as well? Why would you stop me?" However, since his grandfather asked him this question, he knew that there was more to it than that. He just couldn't figure it out. Not returning to one's hometown for riches is like walking in the night. "Can, have you heard of this saying before?" Shangguan Can seemed to have caught onto something, and he vaguely understood the meaning behind his grandfather's words. However, in the end, he still couldn't make sense of it. "You can put it that way. I swear I won't return it until I've learned it and become famous." Duke Ju paused for a moment before saying, "If you were Chu Yang and you weren't fully prepared, would you come here?" Boom. Shangguan Can's brain exploded as he completely understood why his grandfather didn't stop him. That piece of shit had just entered Taijing, so it was impossible for him to visit at such a time. When that piece of shit first entered Taijing City, he had nothing. The imperial examination was approaching. If he were to stand out in the imperial examination and emerge as the champion, wouldn't he be even more confident when he visited them then? At the very least, if that piece of shit were to come knocking on his door, he would at least prepare some gifts. How could he possibly come empty-handed? Shangguan Can quickly thought of an even more important reason. Even though that pile of shit was on good terms with his family and even had a marriage agreement with his sister, that pile of shit would definitely not use this as an excuse to move into Grand Duke Ju's residence and borrow its influence. Because he was proud, he would never lower himself and grovel in front of their family and become a punching bag. From their initial interaction, he had to admit that that pile of shit had a backbone, and he was extremely arrogant. How could he possibly be looked down upon by their family and become worthless? Grandfather, I saw through it long ago, but I wasn't aware of it. Chapter 2491. Look at these 4 poems. When Duke Ju saw that Shangguan had finally understood what he meant, he continued, Kui huan 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 kui. The spring festival gala was drowsy, drowsy in late spring. Fine pear snowfalls, falling snow pear flowers fine. Who is frowning and thinking of? Who is frowning and thinking of? Duke Ju recited it slowly and said, this poem is about spring's resentment. The first 6 lines describe the late spring season in detail, the woman's posture and the melancholy of sleep. The scenery seeps into the mood, the meaning is tranquil. The phrase whose frown is shallow, who is it that I miss? Who is it that I miss when I frown and worry? And who would miss a frowning and worried person like me? When the same words are inverted, the meaning of the words will change, and the charm will also be different. It can be said to be wonderful. At this point, Duke Ju paused. He looked at Shangguan and asked, do you know what palindromes are? Palimpsest. Was it the palindrome mentioned by that pile of shit? Shangguan was stunned. He really didn't know. Previously, he didn't want to know and didn't think it was a big deal. But when his grandfather asked, his mind buzzed and he immediately realized the ingenuity of it. The next sentence of Jade made slanting curtain cloud drooping ear is Jade made slanting curtain cloud drooping ear. Isn't this the complete opposite? The spring festival gala was drowsy, drowsy in late spring. Fine pear snowfalls, falling snow pear flowers fine. Who does a frown miss? Who does a person miss a frown? When he finished the entire poem, he suddenly realized that every sentence was the same. Every sentence was reversed, and the entire poem was like this. His mind was greatly shaken. This piece of shit actually has such a clever mind. Is it so impressive? He thought. His poetry has already reached such a level of purity and perfection. Shangguan was deeply shocked. She suddenly thought of the other 3 poems. The willows in the courtyard are quiet and the people sleep during the day. The willows in the courtyard are quiet and the people sleep during the day. A thin sweaty gown is cool, a thin sweaty gown is fragrant. Ice bowl lotus root red hand, ice bowl lotus root red hand. Lang Xiao's lotus root silk is long, the long lotus root silk smiles Lang Xiao. This was the story of the summer girl's grievances. The first half of the song was about the scene of sleeping during the day, while the second half was about the sorrowful thoughts after waking up. Although the intention was not deep, the language was clear and elegant. The long lotus root symbolized a long-lasting affection in the poem, using the lotus root to harmonize with the word couple, and using the word silk to harmonize with the word think. The lotus root nodes were of the same mind, thus symbolizing the eternal love between lovers. Therefore, the saying, Lang Jun laughs at my longing for love, but I laugh at Lang Jun for not appreciating it, actually meant, Lang Jun laughs at my longing for love, but I laugh at Lang Jun for not appreciating it. The meaning of the girl's resentment was only pointed out at the end of the sentence. Moreover, it was hidden in an object, extremely implicit and tactful. Moreover, every sentence was a palindrome. Under Duke Ju's tutelage, Shangguan attainments in poetry had reached an extraordinary level. It only took him a moment to realize the essence of the second poem. Jingtong shuang jiao, cold makeup shuang jiao, cold makeup shuang tong well. The snowflakes fly and melt my cheeks, the fragrance on my cheeks separates me from the warmth of the flowers and snow. The third poem was autumn's resentment, while the fourth poem was winter's resentment. These 2 poems were the same as the first 2. They were also palindromes, and they were also exquisite and exquisite. They combined the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. When Shangguan realized this, he was completely dumbfounded. He already knew that the pile of shit was a formidable poet, but he didn't know that the pile of shit would have reached such a level in the field of poetry. As pure as the flames of passion, as simple and natural as eating and drinking, he could compose a top-notch poem with ease. Do you still think that he's inferior to you? Wang. Duke Ju's words sounded like a resounding bell in Shangguan Can's ears. In an instant, his mind buzzed once more, and his heart trembled uncontrollably. The conviction in his heart was struck by an unprecedented blow. Do you still think that you're inferior to him in terms of literary prowess, but he's inferior to you in terms of martial arts? Chapter 2492. Shangguan Can knew very well that in the entire heavenly spirit world, only the Central Plains had education, and only in the Central Plains did the literary path flourish. Because of this, the literary path had become one of the basis of nobility, forming the order of nobility. Only in the Central Plains did the literary path receive great attention, no other place could compare to it. But whether it was in the Central Plains or any other place, the martial path was highly valued. In other words, that pile of shit might be able to surpass him in the martial path, but it was impossible for him to surpass him in the literary path. On the other hand, if that pile of shit was able to surpass him in the literary path, then it wouldn't be surprising if that pile of shit was able to surpass him in the martial path. A person's background, environment, and so on are all very important. But if someone is inferior to you in these aspects, it doesn't mean that you will be able to surpass them. Because in this world, there are always some people who can't be judged by common sense. Shangguan Can didn't reply. He didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, a sharp light flashed in his eyes as he spoke. Grandfather, are you saying that Chu Yang is such a person? He didn't refer to Chu Yang as a pile of shit anymore, because he was Duke Ju's grandson. At this point, if he still did not have the slightest bit of awareness, then he was truly beyond redemption. Hearing those words, Duke Ju nodded. From the looks of it, he's a monster, a complete anomaly. Even when he's in an extremely disadvantageous position, he's still able to overcome it and emerge victorious over those who are far more outstanding than he. Even if he is a freak, in the martial path, I won't necessarily lose to him. Shangguan Can gritted his teeth and said these words in a very unconvinced manner. Ha ha. All of a sudden, Duke Ju burst into laughter. Why is it only in terms of martial arts? Are you really inferior to him in terms of literary skills? You are my grandson, don't be scared by a few poems of his. Shangguan Can was shocked. He thought that his grandfather was going to teach him a lesson, but he didn't expect that his grandfather would say such words in the end, and that he would believe him so much. He really did not expect this at all, so the warmth in his heart surged. When he saw his grandfather's kind face again, other than the respect in his heart, another stronger feeling burst forth. This was his grandfather, the renowned Duke Ju of the Central Plains. This was a benevolent old man who loved and cared for him greatly and was filled with confidence in him. He had given him great encouragement, recognition, and confidence. He was one of the most important figures in his life. How lucky am I to have such a grandfather? How can I be inferior to that Chu Yang? Shangguan Can clenched his fists and said confidently, Grandfather, you're right. I might not be inferior to him in terms of literary skills. Ha ha ha. Duke Ju laughed heartily. You are indeed my grandson. Only during the imperial examinations will you be able to see your true abilities and determine victory and defeat. Only by defeating him in front of everyone's eyes will you be able to display your true ability. So, during this period of time, before the imperial examinations begin, don't worry about anything else. Just focus on studying and practicing martial art. The imperial examinations. Shangguan Can's heart jolted. He immediately agreed with his grandfather's words. That was the place where a man should display his true abilities. Everything else was just a small matter, not worth a mention. Grandfather, I will work hard. I won't let you down. Go, work hard. You won't lose to anyone. After Shangguan Can and Shangguan Bao left, the old servant by Duke Ju's side asked, Old master, do you really think that young master can defeat that little bastard? Chapter 2493. Stroking his beard, Duke Ju chuckled, "Do you want to hear the truth or the lie?" The old servant chuckled, "Old master, of course, I want to hear the truth." Duke Ju retracted the smile on his face and said, "Kanur is able to defeat that bastard, but Kanur is also far inferior to that little bastard." This seemed to be a contradiction, but the old servant immediately understood what was going on. The first sentence was, "Nothing is predestined, and everything can be changed." The second sentence was to say that Shangguan Kan was indeed inferior to Chu Yang in many aspects. On top of that, as Shangguan Kan's grandfather, Duke Ju naturally had confidence in his grandson. In fact, it could also be said that Duke Ju's confidence in Shangguan Kan was equivalent to his confidence in himself. After all, he was the one who taught Shangguan Kan. Young Master Kan isn't the only one who is dissatisfied. Old Master is clearly dissatisfied as well. The old servant couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He knew his master very well. In truth, what Shangguan Kan had learned from Duke Ju wasn't just limited to what the latter had said. He also understood what Duke Ju had left unsaid. Shangguan Bao had requested for Chu Yang to compose a poem, so why would Chu Yang give face to his parents and not his grandfather? That was because Chu Yang knew that his grandfather was Duke Ju, so he was bound to be a reasonable person. Naturally, such a person could be persuaded with reason. Furthermore, through the song Elope, Shangguan Kan also understood the meaning behind Chu Yang's words. His elder sister Shangguan Lan's marriage to Chu Yang wasn't a marriage of lower status, and even if his family wanted to stop it, they wouldn't be able to do so. He sure is confident and arrogant. Because of this, he thought of Chu Yang's wanton and unrestrained behavior. He was also the same. However, in comparison, he realized that his unrestrained behavior was nothing more than a profligate scion. On the other hand, Chu Yang wasn't one of them. Chu Yang's wanton and unrestrained behavior was the result of all the restraints of the world. All the enmity, all the contempt and ridicule of his enemies, was the most vivid embodiment of his free self. In this regard, Shangguan Kan realized that he was far inferior to Chu Yang. As a result, he became even more hardworking in the following days, almost not sleeping at all. When Shangguan Kan was reminded by Duke Ju, Chu Yang was blocked by a group of people on his way to the Wen Palace Hall. After this group of people blocked Chu Yang, they didn't make a move. They just stopped him. After he spoke, they arrogantly informed him that someone had ordered them to do so, and that person was about to arrive. Chu Yang did not know who it was, but he was not afraid, so he waited. "This is Chu Yang, the fiancé of the divine fragrance genius girl. Doesn't he look like much?" Although Chu Yang's arrival in Taijing City was very lively, not everyone paid attention to it, especially the people in the Wen Palace Hall. They definitely didn't think that there was anything more important than the imperial examination. Therefore, even though many of them heard that Chu Yang was going to enter the city, they didn't pay attention to it. Now that Chu Yang had appeared in front of them, they naturally began to talk about it. "He's only in the Nirvana realm. This kind of strength is too weak in the imperial examination. He's not far from the bottom. Don't judge so easily. Since this country bumpkin was able to come here, he might have already broken through many obstacles. I'm afraid that he's quite capable. If that's the case, the city should be very lively. Soon, the news will spread here." "That's right. Let's wait and see. Also, isn't there someone blocking him? Let's see how he's going to sign up for the imperial examination." Chapter 2494. Chu Yang could not help but frown when he heard the discussions. It was indeed a little late. It would be very troublesome if he missed the registration time of the imperial examination. He could not tolerate it. The imperial examination was an opportunity to show his value. He still hoped to make a name for himself in the imperial examination and then use this opportunity to meet his wife. Who is this group of people? Who is looking for trouble with me? Chu Yang pondered in his heart, but in the end, he could not help but laugh. It must be those people, those who admired Shangguan Lan, those who did not like and looked down on him. Get out of my way. Since that guy is here, I will naturally meet him. He took a step forward, but the group of people in front of him did not move at all. The leader of the group was a burly young man. He looked at him condescendingly and said coldly, "Country bumpkin, you'd better behave yourself. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." After a pause, the man sneered and said, "I asked you to wait, so you wait. Do you think I'm negotiating with you? How unreasonable." Chu Yang's expression suddenly turned cold, but he was also very helpless. Strength. Among the group of people, at least the cultivation of the death spirit realm, most of them were sages, and there were even 3 or 4 of them at LV1 Earth Emperor realm. The burly young man was at LV1 Earth Emperor realm. Although his cultivation was high, his foundation was not very solid. However, there were many people in this group. If Chu Yang wanted to break through, he would have to reveal his strength. He did not want to reveal his strength before the imperial examination began. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Humph, country bumpkin, it seems that you really don't understand human language. It seems that there is no other way." Crack. Chu Yang clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles made cracking sounds. He pondered in his heart, "This group of people must have received someone's order to block my way. As for the person who gave the order, he must have known what I did in Taijing City. In other words, that guy is looking for trouble." He could not wait any longer. Otherwise, he would really delay the registration for the imperial examinations. At this moment, Chu Yang was truly sullen and helpless. He was forced to reveal his strength and fall into a passive state. That country bumpkin is really arrogant. From the looks of it, he's planning to fight with Chen Duan and the others. There's a good show to watch. We'll soon find out how capable this country bumpkin is. The country bumpkin looks very arrogant now, but don't be too unsightly later. Otherwise, he would cry bitterly and beg for mercy on his knees. That would be meaningless, and we would be looking forward to it for nothing. His only at the Nirvana realm. I really don't know how this country bumpkin can be so presumptuous. The crowd in front of the Wen Palace Hall immediately became lively and clamorous. Because of the hubbub, the civil officials in the Hall of Literature already knew about the situation here. They knew that Chu Yang's registration was blocked, but they didn't care. "You will regret this, all of you will regret this." Chu Yang couldn't help but get angry. Did they really think they were chickens, ducks, and dogs that they could bully and humiliate at will? Rumble. It wasn't the sound of thunder, but a loud sound caused by someone rushing over. Just as Chu Yang was about to trigger the thunder tribulation. The thunder tribulation had always been one of Chu Yang's trump cards. Under the situation where he was blocked and he didn't want to reveal his strength, he immediately thought of this method. After staying in the Sage King College for so long, he had stayed at the peak of the Nirvana realm for nearly a few months. At this time, it was easy for him to trigger the thunder tribulation. Once the thunder tribulation appeared, the world would turn upside down. Chapter 2495. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Before the person arrived, the world was already filled with the sound of the wind. The surrounding buildings were suffused with a faint light. The restrictions protecting the buildings in the city had already been activated. With a whoosh, the person was very fast. Before the crowd could react, he had already floated down like a cloud. He had already turned around. In his strange eyes, 2 blue beams of light shot out, staring at Chu Yang. His gaze was fierce, like an eagle staring at a mouse. Chu Yang was not afraid at all. His gaze also met. The 2 gazes seemed to meet in mid-air. In an instant, the surroundings were dead silent. Only the wind was blowing, but it was quickly weakening. The person who came was dressed in a green robe. As soon as he landed in front of the group of people, he immediately showed a great difference. His clothes were different, his face was different, and his temperament was different. He did not speak much, but his words and actions seemed to be different. Everything was different. He was not dressed strangely, nor did he have a strange appearance, but he would give people a different feeling. His arrival was like a crane landing in a flock of chickens, a crane standing out from the flock. He was outstanding and did not belong to the crowd. Chu Yang immediately thought of a name, Chen Buchuan. He also almost immediately determined that this person was Chen Buchuan. There was no basis, just intuition. If this is really Chen Buchuan, I'm afraid this Chen Buchuan is really terrifying. Chu Yang's eyes narrowed slightly. The person was exactly like his name, and completely matched. This was definitely not easy to do. To be able to do it was definitely something to be proud of. The wind was weaker, and there was no sound of wind. Finally, the wind completely stopped. There was no wind at all, making everything seem even more dead silent, even more oppressive. No one dared to make a sound. Everyone quietly looked at the two people in the field. The two slender figures, their eyes did not blink. Chen Buchuan, you are that pile of shit. The two people almost said in unison. Chu Yang's voice was the first to fall, followed by Chen Buchuan's voice. It seemed to have been dragged out, and so did the contempt in his voice. At this moment, the two of them confirmed each other's identity. The difference was that Chu Yang's words were more restrained, while Chen Buchuan was very presumptuous. Chu Yang didn't pay attention to this kind of contempt. He was already impervious to contempt. He directly said, Zhuo Yi Kun. Chen Buchuan is a very good name, and he did a good job on the surface. It's a pity that you don't live up to your name. You're really unworthy of such a good name. You're saying that I stopped you from registering because I didn't dare to compete with you in the imperial examination? Is that right? Chen Buchuan did not avoid this point at all. He then said, you can rest assured that no matter how late it is, even if you can't register in time, no one will dare to stop you from participating in the imperial examination. Chu Yang understood the meaning behind his words. If he couldn't participate in the imperial examination, Shangguan Can, the 6 great young masters of Taijing City, would definitely not agree. They would be furious because they all wanted to crush Chu Yang in the imperial examination to prove themselves. Whoever dared to miss this opportunity would be making an enemy out of the 6 great young masters. Even Taijing City's Wen Palace couldn't bear this. Chapter 2496. Hua. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. That country bumpkin dared to say that Chen Buchuan, one of the 6 young masters, is incompetent. How can he say such words? If we're talking about incompetent, it should be that country bumpkin. How can this have anything to do with Chen Buchuan? That country bumpkin does not know fear and speaks without thinking. What does he not dare to say? However, he will definitely pay the price and regret it for the rest of his life. The crowd's reaction was very big, and Chen Buchuan's reaction was also slightly big. His blue pupils abruptly shrank, causing the blue light beam shooting out of the hole to suddenly change as he coldly said, that piece of shit, do you really think that you can completely crush me in the Wendao? Not convinced. If you're not convinced, then I'll beat you until you're convinced. Since Chen Buchuan had avoided the embarrassing matter of his servant, Chu Yang was also disinclined to pester him on this matter. So, he directly pointed at Chen Buchuan and beckoned him with his finger. Then, he said in a provocative manner, what do you want to compete in? I'll let you choose. If I can beat you, Lu Tihei, to the Zhengguangxi region once, then I can beat you countless times. Literary path. Lu Tihei beating Zhengguangxi? Everyone did not understand, especially this so-called Lu Tihei punching Zhengguangxi. It could be said that they did not understand at all. Chen Buchuan suddenly felt aggrieved. If they were to compete, he was afraid that he would not be Lu Tihei's opponent. He angrily said, we'll naturally see the truth in the imperial examination. Haha. Chu Yang directly laughed in his trademark manner and mocked, since we'll see the truth in the imperial examination, why did you rush here in such a hurry? Don't you think it's ironic? Ironic? What ironic? Chen Buchuan coldly laughed. I just want to humiliate you before the imperial examination so that your resentment will deepen. Then, you'll be able to display even more power in the imperial examination. I'm arrogant, but you're even more arrogant than me. You think you're qualified to be arrogant in front of me? Bah. Chu Yang directly spat and replied, I originally thought that you were incompetent, but I didn't expect you to be so incompetent. All kinds of bluffing and wanting to save face. You think you're qualified to be arrogant in front of me. I am telling the truth, but you are treating it as a joke. Chen Buchuan's voice suddenly turned cold. Fine, I will let you feel the difference between us. Talking to a piece of shit like you is already an honor for me. Chu Yang suddenly stopped being angry and laughed. I finally know why the Chen family's servants are so unskilled. It turns out that their masters are also so unskilled. Since you see me as shit, why did you pounce on me without a care? Aren't you afraid of being stained by shit? He sneered even more. This marshal really doesn't know if you're really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. Or perhaps, it's purely because you like to poop and piss, and you like to degrade yourself. Buzz buzz buzz, buzz 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 buzz. When Chen Buchuan heard this, the two blue beams of light emitted from his blue pupils became even brighter. The space in front of him suddenly distorted. It was extremely shocking. Chen Xiaoqi's performance was indeed very bad. It was estimated that he would become a joke. Therefore, Chen Buchuan could be said to have been poked at his sore spot. He was furious. That piece of shit, you really have a sharp tongue. He said sinisterly, if it wasn't for the divine fragrance talented girl, do you think I would care about a piece of shit like you? You plan to continue arguing with me? Chu Yang's expression became even more cynical, his sarcasm becoming sharper. Lan Lan likes a piece of shit like me, but doesn't like an outstanding person like you. So let me ask you, am I a piece of shit, or are you a piece of shit? The divine fragrance talented girl likes you? Are you dreaming? Chen Buchuan was extremely ashamed and angry, but how could he admit it? The killing intent in his heart immediately gushed out. He said coldly, you just got lucky and have a marriage agreement with the talented girl. And what kind of person is the talented girl? She is a filial daughter. She listens to her parents' orders. Just now, she did not reject you and let you take advantage of her. I didn't think that you would take advantage of her and even use the divine fragrance talented girl to raise your own status. Every sentence was based on reason and sharp refutation. Chu Yang faced Chen Buchuan's refutation and stabbed him with a sentence. If things are as you say, if I were you, I would definitely not be so agitated, because there is no need to. Chapter 2497. Everyone was stunned as they listened to the two men's battle of tongues, exchanging blows back and forth, and the shadows of swords and sabers were incessant. What made them even more astonished was that the country bumpkin seemed to be more reasonable while Chen Buchuan seemed to be a hypocrite. He really wanted to save face and was unwilling to face and admit reality. As a result, he was completely at a disadvantage in the battle of words. Because I'm angry, I want to vent. Even if you're a pile of shit, even if I'm dirty, I want to completely destroy you. Chen Buchuan once again gave his own reason. There was no problem in justifying himself. You win. Chu Yang was too lazy to argue with him. You're right, as long as you're right. For Chen Buchuan, this was just Chu Yang being too lazy to argue with him. It was just like how people did not want to touch feces and urine. He was so angry that he punched out. Rumble. The void rumbled as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging. The murderous aura was monstrous and breathtaking. In an instant, everyone present was frightened. They felt as if their hearts had skipped a beat. The memory of the previous second seemed to have been completely erased. This punch was not only fast but also very heavy. It also contained a lot of great power. The swallowing force, the pulling force, the slowing force, the heavy force and so on all acted on Chu Yang's body. Not only did his movements become slow, but his body also became extremely heavy. He could not get rid of the swallowing force and the pulling force. He could not move at all. What kind of fist technique is this? He was shocked and was directly hit by the punch. With a bang, he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He spat out a mouthful of blood. You can't even block one punch of mine. What else do you have to say? Swish. Chen Buchuan moved and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Chu Yang. He stomped on his lower abdomen. In an instant, he was in so much pain that his body arched like a shrimp. His intestines seemed to have been broken and his internal organs seemed to have all exploded. He was caught off guard and suffered a punch. He was suppressed step by step. Chu Yang was like this when he dealt with Chen Xiaoqi. However, this time it was him. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Chen Buchuan stepped on Chu Yang's lower abdomen, looked down and sneered, "The imperial examination will be the time of your death. At that time, under the watchful eyes of the public, not only these people will see your pitiful state and know how incompetent you are." Bang! While speaking, Chen Buchuan kicked Chu Yang in the ribs, sending him flying for more than 1,000 feet before finally submerging him in the dust. Chu Yang lay in the midst of the smoke and dust. He didn't utter a single word. What the hell did he say? He had also ambushed others. What could he say when he was ambushed? A loss was a loss. He wasn't someone who couldn't accept such a small setback. However, he would definitely return all of this. Chen Buchuan was surprised. Chu Yang had a sharp tongue and should have ridiculed him for his sneak attack, but the result was completely different from what he had expected. This kind of surprise suddenly made him realize the difference between him and this pile of shit. At least this pile of shit never looked for excuses. A loss was a loss, and it was very straightforward to admit it. Everyone was also very surprised. They clearly saw everything that had just happened, but they never thought that this country bumpkin would not say a single word even though he had caught on to it. Therefore, many people couldn't help but respect and admire this country bumpkin in their hearts. This was very bad for Chen Buchuan. He seemed to be really inferior. If he was really looked down upon by others, he wouldn't be able to stay for even half a second. That pile of shit, hate it, hate it. I hope that you can vent all of your hatred, resentment, and humiliation during the imperial examination. While his voice was still lingering in the air, Chen Buchuan had already disappeared. Chu Yang staggered and struggled to stand up. He went to the Wen Palace to register for the imperial examination. His heart was filled with killing intent. He would settle his grudges during the imperial examination. Chapter 2498. A new song, a cup of wine, last year's weather, an old pavilion. How long will it be before the sun sets? Helplessly, the flowers fall, and the familiar swallow returns. Wandering alone in a small garden. There is no new song, no cup of wine, no old pavilion, only the setting sun. There are no flowers, no familiar swallow, no small garden or small path. There is only the setting sun. When he came out of the Wen Palace Hall, it was already sunset. The sunset is infinitely good hope. Chu Yang didn't know why such a song appeared in his mind. It was because he wasn't in a good mood. After being punched, kicked, or beaten, no one would be in a good mood. Although it was like what Chen Buchuan said, no one dared to stop him from registering for the imperial examination and everything went smoothly. Not only did it not improve his mood, it made it worse. He saw the ability of Chen Buchuan and the others. Chen Buchuan just farted outside the Wen Palace Hall and everything went smoothly. No one dared to provoke him again. However, not long ago, it was clearly not so. Those people in the Wen Palace Hall of Taijing couldn't wait for him to die. Percent yuan ##. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. In the end, he said angrily in his heart, "Just you wait. What bullshit 6 young masters of Taijing. In the future, I will make you tremble in fear when you see me." Chu Yang left the Wen Palace Hall. When the Wen Palace Hall completely disappeared from his sight, his mood gradually calmed down. A smile finally appeared on his face. This time, entering Taijing was much smoother than he expected. Thinking of this, he naturally felt happy. Before he entered Taijing City, he had imagined many terrible situations and conflicts. However, none of the terrible things that he had imagined had happened. Maybe this is because of Lan Lan, because of Duke Ju. Even if he didn't give face to the monk, he still had to give face to the Buddha. After all, he was Shangguan Lan's fiancé, the grandson-in-law of Duke Ju. Those people in Taijing had to give face to Duke Ju, so they couldn't go too far. However, the smile on Chu Yang's face quickly disappeared. Now, in this calm, there was probably a huge storm brewing. When this storm erupted, everything would be unimaginable. Strength, in the end, it all depends on strength. In the end, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He didn't have any background. Without strength, it was normal for him to be looked down upon and bullied by others. Therefore, it wasn't impossible for him to be killed by that filthy bastard or something else. From this perspective, his future brother-in-law, Shangwan Kan, had helped him a lot by making things difficult for him. Perhaps, this is the reason why Lan Lan, Duke Ju, and the others didn't stop little brother-in-law. Chu saw many things of the situation, of the Taijing, 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 Taijing of Taijing, Taijing of Taijing, Taijing, Taiping, Taijing, Taijing, Taiz, Tai, Taiping, Taiping. He had no intention of staying in Taijing City because Taijing City was no different from a tiger's den to him. There were too many uncertainties in it. Temporarily withdrawing from this place was the best choice. Chapter 2499. Looks like I have to pick up my pace. Once I'm out of the city, I'll shake off my pursuers and change my appearance. Then I'll be completely safe. On the streets, the flow of people had become extremely sparse. A few shops were closing, and a few children were playing by the side of the road. When Chu Yang suddenly sped up, he also clearly felt that the 7 or 8 people behind him couldn't help but quicken their pace. Da. At this moment, the sound of hurried horse hooves came from the front. He saw a burly man riding his horse towards him at high speed. He seemed to have something urgent and was in a hurry. When he was about 3 feet away from him, he took the initiative to avoid the man and the horse. However, he suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart. In an instant, Chu Yang immediately put up a defense against the burly man. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a great sharpness behind him. Oh no, that burly man is just a bait to attract my attention. This is the real killer move. When Chu Yang realized it, it was already too late. He could clearly feel a slender sword piercing through his clothes and into his flesh. It went all the way in, piercing through his heart with incomparable precision. It went through his entire chest. When he saw the blood coming out from the tip of the sword where his heart was, when he saw the cursed patterns on the tip of the sword, he immediately felt nauseous. Only then did he feel the sharp pain in his heart, and his whole body convulsed. This sword was extremely fast, faster than his reaction. It was so fast that he only felt the intense pain when he was on the verge of death. This sword could not be described as sudden. It should be described as magical. It was as if it didn't exist at all. It suddenly appeared out of thin air without a sound. Therefore, he couldn't detect it, he couldn't guard against it, and he couldn't react. In the face of such a sword, there seemed to be only one result, waiting for death. What an unfathomable sword. Who is it? Chu Yang was terrified at this moment. Even with his extremely sharp intuition, he hadn't been able to detect this poisonous snake in the dark from beginning to end. For the first time, he regretted shutting off the perception of the mind network. How can I describe this feeling? Before he died, such a thought actually appeared in his mind. He could say that he didn't know how he died or who killed him. It was as if he had suddenly died in his sleep, never to wake up again. Motherfucker, I can't believe I'm going to die like this. Whoosh. A gust of wind swept over, and Chu Yang saw an extremely handsome horse. Its entire body was jet black, but its eyes were snow white. It was very strange. Then, he heard the sound of a knife cutting through paper. Then, he saw his headless corpse with blood spurting out from his severed neck. Decapitation, decapitation, decapitation. I thought that everything was over. I never thought that there would be another stab at the back. It turns out that the person who gave the last hit is having a good time, while the person who got the last hit is having a bad time. This was Chu Yang's last thought. He was very playful. Bang! His head fell to the ground and made a sound. Then, it rolled on the ground and stopped after rolling for more than 10 feet. His headless corpse also fell straight to the ground, no longer making a sound. Ah! Someone screamed, and it was very mournful. Then, someone shouted, "Murder, murder." At the same time, on the sparsely populated street, there was suddenly chaos. However, in this chaos, the sound of the horses' hooves gradually faded away, and soon, there was no trace of it. That sword, that slender sword, from beginning to end, only appeared in front of Chu Yang's chest. Only Chu Yang saw it. No one else saw it. Chapter 2500. That country bumpkin is dead. That piece of shit is dead. That country bumpkin is dead just like that. The 7 or 8 people who had been following Chu Yang finally came to their senses after a short period of astonishment. They exclaimed in disbelief. Some of them looked at Chu Yang's corpse in a daze, while others immediately chased after the horse and the man. Kai, kai, kai. A strange sound came out. White smoke rose from Chu Yang's corpse and the blood that was scattered on the ground. They were rapidly corroding. In the blink of an eye, the corpse and blood had all disappeared. The white smoke rose into the air and then disappeared completely without a trace. Nothing was damaged. Everything was the same as before. The street was still the same as before. There was no change. There was nothing more, and nothing less. It seemed that no one had ever been assassinated here. There had never been a corpse or blood. Nothing had ever happened. Corpse dissolving powder. No, corpse dissolving powder is 10,000 times more terrifying and 10,000 times more shocking. In this way, that piece of shit is dead. There is nothing left. Even if a piece of shit disappears, at least it will leave a stench. But this country bumpkin left nothing. Who the hell did this? Those who had been following Chu Yang were completely frightened. They were completely at a loss. They couldn't even report back because they couldn't be sure whether Chu Yang was dead or alive. It was as if what they had seen before had never happened. Woo woo woo, the voices of the children on the side of the road also gradually stopped. They couldn't help but open their eyes wide and stare curiously at the place where Chu Yang died. The disappearance of Chu Yang's corpse and the disappearance of his blood made their fear disappear completely. It was as if they had just been severely frightened. Although many people in the shops on both sides of the street were still trembling, they slowly calmed down at this moment. The night wind blew? No, it couldn't be considered a night wind. Although the sky was darker, it wasn't completely dark. Soon, the surroundings quieted down, but it seemed a little strange. When some pedestrians passed by on the street, they became aware of this strangeness and couldn't help but become more careful. However, there were also some pedestrians who were in a hurry and didn't notice this. When they saw that they were about to pass by the place where Chu Yang had died, they immediately let out a loud roar and rushed out. Stop! Stop right now! If you walk any further, even the King of Hell won't be able to save you. You ruined the murder scene. Even if you don't die, you'll still lose a layer of skin. Each voice was more anxious than the last, and it was filled with panic. The pedestrians were scared out of their wits, and they almost fell to the ground. However, they didn't see any dead people. Whoosh! At this moment, there were already people rushing over to take these people away. This is a restricted area. Entry is prohibited. All trespassers will be killed without mercy. Those who were following Chu Yang began to seal off the road and protect the scene. Although there was nothing there, many passers-by were puzzled. On both sides of the street, those who had witnessed Chu Yang's death with their own eyes all stayed. They needed these people to testify for them. In just a short time, there were urgent voices immediately. Even in Taijing City, where flying was prohibited, there was a dense sound of something breaking through the air. Swish, swish, swish. 6 slender figures were the first to arrive. Then, an old and elegant figure appeared out of thin air, followed by the prefectural magistrate of Taijing City. Chapter 2501. The night had completely shrouded the area and it was pitch black. From afar, the street where Chu Yang died looked like a sun that would never set in the west. The faint light completely dispelled the unsettled darkness. Especially on that street, it was as bright as day. Although it was daytime, it was as silent as the night. It was deathly silent. There were many people. Many, 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 many. Densely packed, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. It was as if all the people in Taijing City had gathered here. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital, Huangfu Xian, Shangguan Kan, Chen Buchuan, as well as Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiubua, and Wu Siyi, were all outstanding talents and stood out like the 6 most dazzling stars in the night sky. The 6 young masters' talent and appearance seemed to be a big reason. However, at this moment, everyone's gaze fell on them. It seemed that there was another more important reason. The one who killed that country bumpkin was most likely one of the 6 young masters, or a few of them, or even the 6 young masters. The reason why people would think like this was naturally very simple. That country bumpkin was the fiancé of the divine fragrance girl. The 6 young masters all wanted that country bumpkin dead. Shangguan Can sensed the suspicious gazes of the people. His chest heaved up and down like a bellows. The anger in his heart was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He was about to explode. He had been studying tirelessly at home. He wanted to defeat that country bumpkin in the imperial examination to prove himself and make his grandfather proud. However, he suddenly heard such bad news. Bad news. That's right. It was simply a terrible news. Shangguan Can's mind went blank when he heard that Chu Yang had died. Then, he became incomparably furious. How could this country bumpkin die like this? How could he die like this? Shangguan Can was truly unable to accept it. It was the first time in his life that he was so serious and determined to defeat someone. However, his opponent had died at the beginning. In an instant, everything was gone. All of his motivation had disappeared. It was as if the heavens had played a big joke on him. However, this joke was too funny. It was so funny that he wanted to kill someone. His eyes were like 2 balls of fire as he stared at Huang Fuxian, Chen Buchuan, and the others. It was as if he could not wait to pounce on them and tear them apart. Huang Fuxian and the other 4 also had the same feelings as Shangguan Can. They were also full of energy to ruthlessly crush Chu Yang's spirit in the imperial examination. They wanted to firmly trample Chu Yang under their feet to prove to Shangguan Lan that they were more outstanding than Chu Yang. In fact, they didn't know how many times more outstanding they were. Their emotions were mixed with a lot of thoughts, because that country bumpkin Chu Yang was indeed exceptional. The absolute and arithmetic problems in Zhuangyuan County, as well as the 9 poems and 13 verses in Taijing City, all proved this point. Therefore, they had no choice but to treat this country bumpkin as their opponent. However, when they were accumulating strength, their opponent died just like that. He died in such a bizarre and strange way. There was no corpse left, not a drop of blood, and not even a speck of blood was left. This made them feel as if they had thrown a punch with all their strength but hit empty air. They also felt as if something important had been taken away from them. The great anger in their hearts could not help but burst out. Therefore, they understood Shangguan Can's anger very well. Because that kind of anger was their anger. What are you looking at? In the face of Shangguan Can's anger, Huang Fuxian could not suppress the anger in his heart. He spoke angrily, but it was very inappropriate. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, his words were too vulgar and inappropriate. However, it made many people's hearts skip a beat, because they could hear the fury in Huang Fuxian's voice. It was a monstrous fury. Chapter 2502. What the hell are you looking at? 3 voices spoke at the same time. They were all extremely angry. They were Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and Wu Ce. At this moment, the 3 of them were on the verge of exploding in anger. They completely ignored the gazes of the people around them, completely displaying their impudence and unbearability in front of everyone. The 6 great young masters like this made people feel a lot less reverence. When the 3 of them spoke again, only Chen Buchuan of the 6 great young masters didn't speak. Whoosh! Immediately, Huang Fuxian, Shangguan Can, and the other 4 stared at Chen Buchuan. Everyone's eyes also stared at Chen Buchuan. Suddenly, Chen Buchuan's face was boiling hot. His face was as red as a red cloth. He felt extremely humiliated. As one of the 6 great young masters, one of the best of the younger generation, he was actually doubted by his own peers. There was nothing more humiliating than this. You'd better stop before going too far. Crack, crack. He gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. His swollen face seemed like it was going to explode with a bang. Why didn't you punch and kick him if you had nothing to do? Are you very capable? You're really capable. You can't be more capable. Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and Wu Ce all mocked and ridiculed. In the end, Shangguan Can directly roared, "Chen Buchuan, I'll fuck you. I didn't even flare up when that country bumpkin gave me a set of Lu Tihei punches to Zhen Guanxi. What kind of dog are you? You punched my opponent and kicked him twice. Don't I have hands and feet?" Shangguan Can was completely enraged. This made him look like a very competent brother-in-law. Chen Buchuan was also completely despised. Everyone despised him. His vision darkened and he almost fainted. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He had punched that country bumpkin once and kicked him twice. The price he had to pay was actually so high. At this time, he was actually directly ganged up and was relegated to the ranks of the inferior. He had suffered such a great loss and was explosively miserable. He suddenly roared at the crowd, Who killed that country bumpkin? Everyone had different reactions, but many people felt that it was strange. The people who wanted nothing more than for the country bumpkin to die were actually so angry after the country bumpkin died, almost to the point of hysteria. Naturally, no one answered. No one dared to answer, and no one dared to provoke him at this time. "You'd better pray that I don't find you, you bastard. If I were to investigate you, I would definitely cut you into 1,000 pieces and tear your corpse into 1,000 pieces." Chen Buchuan was on the verge of going crazy. His roars reverberated in everyone's ears. To everyone's surprise, it seemed that Chen Buchuan was not the only one who had such thoughts. The other 5 young masters of the 6 great young masters also seemed to have the same thoughts. When Chen Buchuan roared in rage, each of them emitted a dense killing intent. Their cold gazes swept over everyone present. His gaze seemed to materialize as it landed on everyone's bodies, causing them to involuntarily dodge. "Greetings, Duke Ju." Grand Capital City Magistrate Yi Huan's voice sounded. The matter that he was worried about had happened, but what he didn't expect was that the first person to die would be that troublemaker, Chu Yang, that country bumpkin. He bowed respectfully to Duke Ju and said, "Duke Ju, after several verifications, many witnesses have confirmed that Chu Yang has been killed in the eastern wilderness, and his corpse has mysteriously disappeared. There is something fishy about this case." Before he could finish his words, Duke Ju had already spoken. "I can't sense the slightest hint of death aura, and I can't sense any emotions either. A person would naturally emit death aura, and before a person dies, there should be intense emotions too." These words were nonsense, but if it was Duke Ju who said it, it wouldn't be nonsense. After all, this was Duke Ju. Even if one were to ignore Duke Ju's cultivation, if these words came from Duke Ju's mouth, it would be as heavy as Mount Tai. Chapter 2503. As such, everyone was shocked by Duke Ju's words. Many of them had witnessed Chu Yang's death with their own eyes, but why was Duke Ju so certain that the country bumpkin was still alive? Duke Ju stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He frowned and said, "If it wasn't Chu Yang, I could be certain that this person is still alive. But if it is him, I'm not so sure." Hua! The crowd suddenly burst into an uproar. What does this mean? Even Duke Ju can't predict Chu Yang's strength? That's impossible. Duke Ju is such a powerful person. How can he not predict a country bumpkin's strength? Perhaps Duke Ju is just being humble and doesn't have 100% confidence. At most, he would say a few words with great reservations. However, no matter how much people discussed, there was no answer, and no answer was given. After Duke Ju spoke, he directly disappeared and left. Huang Fuxian and the others were also shocked. They understood Duke Ju's character and were impressed by him. However, they didn't expect Duke Ju to have such a high opinion of Chu Yang. As for whether Chu Yang was dead or alive, the 6 of them weren't sure either. Grandpa has a very high opinion of Chu Yang. He even thinks that I'm far inferior to Chu Yang. However, he still encourages me like that. I'm afraid that I'll lose my drive, and even more afraid that I'll go astray. Among the 6 of them, Shangguan Can had the most complicated feelings. He knew that his grandfather had put in a lot of effort and thought highly of Chu Yang. Otherwise, his grandfather wouldn't have appeared today. Other than him, his grandfather wouldn't care even if the remaining 5 of the 6 young masters of Taijing City were all dead. To his grandfather, It was just a small matter. However, his grandfather appeared immediately after Chu Yang's death. How could he not understand the meaning behind this? If Shangguan Can's feelings were complicated, then the one who felt the most aggrieved was the magistrate of Taijing City, Yi Huan. What the hell was this? His mind was in a mess. It's really not easy being the magistrate of Taijing City. Yi Huan sighed in his heart for a while and began a thorough investigation of the case. The first thing he did was to inspect the scene again. At the same time, he also asked the 6 great young masters of Taijing City to stay behind and interrogate them. Usually, if he dared to do this, the 6 great young masters of Taijing City would definitely ignore him. However, this time, the 6 of them were extremely cooperative. This made the magistrate of Taijing City sigh in his heart. This Chu Yang really has a lot of face. I don't even have this kind of face in the past, but you have a lot of face. Because of this, the magistrate officers of Taijing City did not dare to be careless. Everyone did their best to make them feel that the one who died was not a country bumpkin, but a prince. A prince with an illustrious status and was highly valued. The crowd did not leave. Instead, more and more people gathered. There were all kinds of people. Among the crowd, there was a person who was not very conspicuous. One of his hands was covered by a large straw hat. Left hand. His left hand was covered. No one knew why he covered his left hand with a hat. Naturally, no one knew what his left hand looked like. Of course, this person had more than one hand. In his right hand was a piece of hard bread. It was dry, cold, and hard. However, he was the complete opposite of the hard bread. He was kind, sunny, and enthusiastic. Chapter 2504. The man whose left hand was covered by a hat knew who killed Chu Yang and the person who killed Chu Yang. However, he did not dispose of Chu Yang's body. Because they didn't have time. Moreover, they needed such a corpse to tell everyone that Chu Yang was dead. He was completely and utterly dead. However, the body that was not disposed of mysteriously disappeared. He really could not understand. As for who he was and what he wanted to do, no one knew. Waraha. While this person was confused, an extremely arrogant laughter came from afar. Soon after, he smelled a faint fragrance. Immediately, a beautiful woman appeared in his mind. Although she was an outstanding beauty, she had a super loud voice. She was also like a man, sloppy and extremely mischievous. He didn't know the reason, but he quickly understood. A woman with such a fragrance was definitely a peerless beauty, and that rampant laughter was definitely a hooligan. He had mixed the two together. In the blink of an eye, he knew that he was wrong. He was very wrong. How could a beautiful woman be so vulgar? The vulgar one was just a parrot with extremely bright feathers. It had nothing to do with a beautiful woman. The beautiful woman who came was wearing a veil and her face could not be seen clearly. However, the maidservant beside her was already devastatingly beautiful. It made people intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. This should be the rumored divine fragrance girl. She really has a strange fragrance on her body. The man thought to himself. He looked at the parrot again and immediately knew that it was a parrot. This should be Chu Yang's martial pet. It's really despicable and impudent. Shangguan Lan's arrival made everyone absent-minded. For a long time, there was no sound. As for her arrival, it was not surprising. After all, her fiancé was dead. However, after Shangguan Lan arrived, she did not make a sound. No one knew what she was doing. However, flying was prohibited in Taijing City. She was not a bird but could fly. It was very shocking. Great Emperor's cultivation? Many people were guessing her cultivation level. Seeing Shangguan Lan's arrival, Huang Fuxian and the others' expressions turned ugly. Jealousy burned in their hearts. Even though Shangguan Can was Shangguan Lan's younger brother, he was extremely unhappy at this moment. Amidst the silence, the parrot used its wings to poke at the 6 people in a well-practiced manner. It roared, "The 6 top scorers are from the poor families under the bridge. The butchers guard Guanxi. Please pay attention to your gazes. Did the dogs eat etiquette, justice, benevolence, wisdom, and faith. Also, it's not enough for Commissioner Chu to give you 3 punches, you still need Commissioner Neo to give you 3 more punches. In an instant, the 6 great young masters of Taijing City gritted their teeth, wishing they could tear this lousy parrot apart. Stupid bird, your master is already dead, why are you still making so much noise? Shangguan Can couldn't help but speak up. The arrogance of the parrot really pissed him off. Waha! The parrot's opponent was not only Shangguan Can. It laughed wildly again and poked at them one by one with its wings. Little butcher, little butcher, little butcher, little town, and little tragic. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital were all given nicknames by him. Shangguan Can was the most miserable one. Other than his nickname, which had nothing to do with Butcher Zhenguanxi, the other 5 nicknames were Butcher Zhenguanxi. The 6 of them were so angry that their blood rushed to their heads. Waha, you're about to explode. It seems that this divine bird's mouth didn't fall too far behind Chu Hang. Chapter 2505. Ah, it's sad, it's really sad. You're so unbearable, and I'm afraid you'll also show how unbearable I am. I'll just anger you to death today, so that you won't embarrass yourself in front of Chu Hang. After a pause, it suddenly roared at the 6 people. Hey, you 6 poor people under the bridge. I'm so sincere, why don't you go to hell? As soon as the parrot finished its words, Shangguan Lan directly cut off the parrot's shamelessness and stole everyone's attention. She said softly, he won't die. It was self-evident who he was. Huang Fu Xian and the others were stunned, and so were the others. What made everyone even more shocked was that after Shangguan Lan said this, she turned around and left directly, as if she wanted to prove that Chu Yang was not dead. The parrot chased all the way, imitating the reporter that Chu Hang talked about, and began to interview Shangguan Lan. Miss Divine Fragrance, I'm a reporter from 007 News Agency in the Eastern Wilderness. Miss Divine Fragrance, are you so sure that Chu Hang is not dead because you're his fiancé? Or is that your reason? He's your future husband, ah. Suddenly, the parrot screamed, and Shangguan Lan sped up and soon disappeared. Only the parrot's screams could be heard from afar. I'm not a swallow, I refuse to wear flowery clothes. Sister-in-law, I'm wrong, okay? Every sentence was extremely harsh to the 6 young masters of Taijing City, and the 6 people left with anger. As for Chu Yang's life, they were not sure. After all, those witnesses were not blind. Is Chu Yang dead or not? The man who covered his left hand with a hat became more and more confused. In the end, people began to disperse, and the news spread more and more. Different people had different opinions and opinions. Many people thought that the 6 young masters of Taijing City killed Chu Yang, and their denial was just a cover-up. Some people didn't talk about this, but just described how miserable the scene was when Chu Yang died, such as how his head flew out. Whether Chu Yang was dead or not, this was naturally the focus of the discussion. Almost no one could be sure of this point, but one person was absolutely sure of this point. This person was naturally Chu Yang. Of course, he didn't die. The one who died was his heavenly soul world avatar. His original body had changed his appearance and was one of the people following behind his avatar. The disappearance of the body was naturally easier to explain, of course, it was his doing. Even if his heavenly soul world avatar was killed, how could his original body? But he consumed a lot of his power, and the other trouble was that he encountered was enraged by the Twin Destinies Twins' curse. His original body was in the dark, his avatar in the light was in the light, his avatar in the light, he was in the light, his original body in the dark, his avatar in the light of the light, his original his avatar in the light. This kind of caution not only saved his life, but also completely moved from the light to the dark, and even caught a group of enemies. At this moment, he was in the dark night, in a small town called Maple Forest Crossing outside of Taijing City, looking at a simple and crude farmhouse from afar. He didn't go near, and the heartnet's perception was fully activated. With the help of the heartnet, he could clearly perceive the situation in the small courtyard. As for why he followed him here, it was naturally because of the person who cut off his head. But the person who cut off his head was not in the small courtyard at this moment. Chapter 2506. The old woman knelt on a black praying mat, and in front of her was a black shrine. The shrine was covered by a black divine curtain, and it was impossible to see what god was being worshipped, or whether it was their ancestor. The old woman's face couldn't be seen clearly either. Her face seemed to be a black hole, and any light that landed on it would be devoured immediately. In order to hide such a terrifying face, the old woman used a black veil to cover it. Her shriveled body was also completely covered by a black robe embroidered with strange patterns, and only her ghostly claw-like hands were exposed. At this moment, the ghostly hands were pressed together, and the scarlet patterns on them were like rivers of blood that intersected. It was strange and somewhat terrifying. The old woman seemed to be chanting some kind of incantation, an ancient and extremely vicious incantation. She seemed to be cursing the world, cursing everything. A great resentment surged, and an evil aura filled every corner. Witchcraft. Chu Yang learned this from the MindNet, but he didn't dare to enter the old woman's mind. Instead, he entered the mind of the young man behind the old woman. The young man was dressed in black, and he was about the same age as Chu Yang. He had a handsome face, but it was cold. He was like Xiao Qiuyu from the God's World, or Zhong Jian from the East Continent's Heavenly Sword Academy. He had a cold and handsome face. However, he wasn't holding a sword, but a saber. His left hand was gripping the hilt of the saber tightly, and he didn't relax for a moment. He knelt behind the old woman without moving. It was unknown how long he had been kneeling. It seemed like an era had passed, and it seemed like he was going to kneel until the next era. Witchcraft era. This was also what Chu Yang learned from the young man's mind, but he was very careful. Both the old woman and the young man were extremely strange and shocking. Chu Yang wasn't just surprised by this. There seemed to be many different eras. In the Sage Monarch College, he had come into contact with the Confucian epoch, the Immortal epoch, and now the Shaman epoch. Could it be that the destruction of each epoch was so incomplete? What was the heavens doing? He had a reason to complain. If not for his ability, he would have been killed by the witchcraft epoch. Suddenly, the old woman stood up and pulled aside the black curtain in front of the altar, revealing the scene inside. On the altar, there was a saber, a pitch-black saber, a broken saber. Do you know why it broke when you cut it? The black-clothed youth did not reply. He only raised his head and looked at the broken saber. He was cut in half by someone. Together with your father, he was cut in half by someone's blade. The old woman's voice suddenly became sharp and shrill, like a ghost's shriek. Your father was cut in half by someone. His intestines, heart, and liver were all over the ground. The black-clothed youth's bright eyes suddenly blossomed with the light of hatred. He seemed to be imagining the scene of a woman watching her husband being split in half. Do you know what you are going to do? The old woman's voice suddenly became calm again. However, it seemed like some kind of vicious curse had been cast on the black-clothed youth. The black-clothed youth still did not speak. Suddenly, the old woman held the broken saber in her hand and cut her palm in half. The saber was very sharp. With a light cut, her ghostly claw-like hand was cut in half like a piece of paper. However, the strange thing was that not a single drop of blood flowed out. It was as if there was no blood in her body. The old woman did not feel any pain either. If I don't kill them all, or if you die, I will cut myself in half with this broken saber, just like my palm. The black-clothed youth's body trembled violently. Intense emotions suddenly appeared on his face, but he immediately suppressed them. At this moment, the old woman had already walked out resolutely. It was pitch black outside. I have to face such an enemy. Chapter 2507. In the darkness, Chu Yang quickly calmed down after his initial shock. He had no reason to be afraid of the enemy, even if the enemy was perverted and twisted. The enemy, after being defined as such by the old woman and the black-clothed youth, his fear completely disappeared. He had no way to retreat. He had been pierced by a sword and beheaded by a saber. He really did not know where else he could retreat to. Being perverted is a disease that needs to be treated. The hatred between the old woman and the black-clothed youth was not a reason for them to send someone to stab him to death and behead him. In addition, before the imperial examinations began, he still needed power. Wasn't the witchcraft epoch a kind of power? Chu Yang was now at the peak of the Nirvana realm. The next step was the life and death realm. A Nirvana realm expert could kill a saint, a life and death realm expert could kill an earthly emperor realm expert, and a saint could kill a great emperor. His breakthrough to the life and death realm was different from everyone else. It was not as simple as comprehending the mysteries of life and death. It was equivalent to a saint breaking through to the earthly emperor realm and entering the cycle of reincarnation. Chu Yang's physical body carried the Tao. His physical body was his Tao. In other words, his Tao entering the cycle of reincarnation was very different from others. Both his physical body and spirit had to enter the cycle of reincarnation. The physical body and spirit entering the cycle of reincarnation was related to the cycle of rebirth. Therefore, when his physical body and spirit entered the cycle of reincarnation, perhaps his physical body would be destroyed and his spirit would be reincarnated. The problem he had to face was much more complicated than others. It was definitely not as simple as going through the cycle of reincarnation on the Tao. There were too many uncertainties, so he did not dare to break through to the life and death realm. He really could not imagine himself being reincarnated as a baby. Since he could not break through vertically in martial arts, he could only pin his hopes on horizontally in martial arts. The Confucian way and the immortal way had the state of Confucianism and the state of immortality. Then, the witchcraft way should also have the state of witchcraft. In the dark of the night wind suddenly became stronger, and the leaves rustled in the wind. Chu Yang made a decision in his heart. He used the space technique, and his figure moved, and directly appeared in front of that black-robed youth. When he appeared, he was less than a meter away from the black-clothed youth. Not far away, half of the old woman's palm was on the ground. The exposed bones of her hand were pale white, and her 5 fingers were like ghost claws, as if they had been cut off from a shriveled corpse. Originally, the young man in the dark night was quiet and lonely as he stared at the half of the palm on the ground. He never would have thought that someone would suddenly barge in. Therefore, the moment he sensed Chu Yang's presence, his left hand, which had been tightly gripping the hilt of his saber, was about to strike. However, his movements suddenly stopped. "Name." Chu Yang only said 2 words, calm and unbridled. His tone was almost like an order, as if he was the black-clothed youth's superior. There was no trace of fear. Not only did he not feel apologetic for his sudden intrusion, he even acted as if it was a matter of course, even a little overbearing. All of these were the reasons why the young man did not immediately attack. Everything surprised him, and he could not understand everything. In fact, he seemed to have no choice but to obey. He used his dead face to stare at Chu Yang. Other than this, he did not do anything else. He was like a stone statue, but his left hand, which had been gripping the hilt of his saber, suddenly tightened at this moment. Chu Yang seemed to be affected by the black-clothed youth. His face was expressionless. "Is that mother? Although you will be very angry if I say this, I don't seem to need to care about anger." After a pause, he said indifferently, "She is a pervert, very scary." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.